Chapter 51-52. But it wasn't her. It was the two ladies beside her who quickly stepped back after bumping into Princess Tao. Therefore, Miss Zhang, who was standing behind, happened to face Princess Tao's angry accusation. "You bitch, kneel down." Su Shitao shouted angrily, pointing at Miss Zhang in front of her. Miss Zhang couldn't help but tremble. She hurriedly looked at the ladies around her for help. But now, no one dared to block Princess Tao's anger for her. They hurriedly stepped back. Miss Li originally wanted to go forward and say a few words, but she was hurriedly stopped by Miss Jiang, who was beside her. "The legitimate miss of the Zhang family won't sit by and do nothing," Miss Jiang whispered in her best friend's ear. "Let's wait for a while." As expected, the moment Princess Tao finished shouting, a faint voice came from behind the crowd. "Who is Miss Su asking to kneel down?" Everyone's heart skipped a beat. A delicate and pretty woman in her early 20s slowly walked up and pushed her younger sister back. She glanced indifferently at the furious Su Shitao and said, "Don't think that you are a real princess just because others call you Princess Tao." All the ladies present couldn't help but gasp. They all looked at Miss Zhang, who was so blunt. The legitimate miss of Assistant Minister Zhang's family was really fearless. She didn't care about causing trouble for her family when she talked back to Princess Tao. As expected, Su Shitao was so angry that her hair stood on end. She pointed at Zhang Yuyan, trembled, and screamed, You say that again." Zhang Yuyan said with a sneer, "As everyone knows, there are only 3 princesses in the divine land. Princess Wuxia is famous in the world. I don't need to say more. Princess Fu Fu is the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She's only 9 years old. The other one is a princess. 5 years ago, she married Sangzhou for the sake of righteousness. She hasn't returned yet." "What? There are so many people here, but no one knows that there is another princess in the divine land." Miss Li chuckled. Miss Jiang hurriedly pulled her silly best friend. Today, they had completely offended Princess Tao. A young lady with no rank calls herself a princess. "Heh, I usually just take it as a compliment from my sisters. Don't tell me that you've really taken it to heart. Do you really think that you're a princess, berating the daughters of officials and making them kneel to you? If my Shu sister were to kneel down today, which of the young ladies present would have any face left? The daughter of an official in our divine land has to kneel down and apologize to a commoner lady with no rank. Isn't this the biggest joke in the world?" "Well said." Fang Luiying clapped her hands vigorously and walked over with large strides. Just now, she had heard the noise by the pond from afar. When she rushed over, she found that it was Princess Tao of Prince Zheng's mansion who was throwing a tantrum again. Princess Tao was really a troublemaker. She was nothing, but she thought too highly of herself. When the noble ladies saw the young crown princess and Fang Luiying walking over together, they were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly lined up to greet the crown princess, who was not to be trifled with. No one dared to neglect the young crown princess. Compared with the arrogant and domineering Princess Tao, she was the one who was not to be trifled with. Chapter 51-53. As the young crown prince consort walked over, all the noble ladies and young misses she saw lined up to greet her. Every one of them was well behaved, without the slightest overstep. Their expressions were also more respectful than usual. Almost all of them had their heads lowered, looking like quails. The young crown princess raised her small hand and waved, expressionlessly saying, "No need to be so polite." The ladies repeatedly thanked her, then stood up in a well-behaved manner, retreated to the 2 sides and stood still. Dozens of ladies stood at the edge of the pond. Absolutely silent Fang Mingyue was extremely angry, staring at this elder sister who appeared with great momentum, and said with ridicule, "Elder sister really has a great aura. Now the way you act is more and more like the first madam's arrogance." Fang Luiying sneered, "Younger sister, are you blind? In front of the crown princess, you dare to be so rude. Didn't you see that the other young ladies of the other families have already come forward to greet? Younger sister really doesn't know the rules, quickly come forward to greet. Younger sister, you have to give face to the Count family. Fang Mingyue secretly clenched her teeth, smiled apologetically, and bent her knees to greet. This little girl Fang Mingyue greets the crown princess. She slightly bent her knees and stood up straight, looking at Arbor with a smile. Fang Mingyue thought, the greeting is just for show. Thinking about it, I am the grandniece of old concubine Fang, the crown princess shouldn't not give me a little face. Kai Xiu. Unexpectedly, the young crown princess walked past Fang Mingyue with a cold face. Her small face didn't fake any expression, showing no intention of giving face to Fang Mingyue. Fang Mingyue's fake smile suddenly froze on her face, and she couldn't help but mutter in her heart. This crown princess was too snobbish, facing her elder sister and facing her, it was two completely different faces. Could it be that she was looking down on her, a concubine's daughter? The young crown prince consort had a stoic and expressionless little face from beginning to end. For some reason, it became two different faces in Fang Mingyue's eyes. On the other side, Kai Xiu nodded after receiving the order. She stepped forward and kicked the back of Fang Mingyue's knee. Fang Mingyue, who was not paying attention for a moment, screamed, and fell forward, kneeling down heavily. Crown Princess, did the Crown Princess allow you to rise? Kai Xiu coldly said with a cold voice. Don't you know the rules? Kneel properly. Kai Xiu angrily shouted, scaring Fang Mingyue to the point that her heart slightly trembled. Arbor walked to the edge of the pond and asked someone to bring him a stool to sit on. Only then did he calmly look at Su Shitao, who was glaring at him. The little stoic raised her small hand and pointed at Su Shitao standing to the side. Just as Kai Chi was about to step forward, Su Shitao clenched his teeth and curtsied, "Greetings, Crown Princess." The little Crown Princess frowned. Why are you still here? Why is there a shit-stirrer like you everywhere I go? Su Shitao was already in such a sorry state at the entrance just now, but he actually followed her into the Count of Huainan's estate instead of returning home. She was loathsome just looking at him. Even his expression was distorted as he glared at this darling with hatred. Just looking at him was an eyesore. You aren't deliberately staying here to plot against this crown princess, right? Su Shitao almost bit his own tongue. This damn woman was truly sharp, causing him to be at a loss for words. This crown princess advises you to behave yourself. Arbor snorted. If you want to play tricks with me, I'll accompany you to the end. I just don't know if you can afford to play. Chapter 51-54. Su Shitao's knees were a little sore from bending, but the little crown princess did not ask her to get up. As a result, the man could only stand there with his back half bent and his face half frozen. The anger in his heart was so strong that it was rushing to his head. However, Arbor was even angrier when he saw Su Shitao. The commotion just now was all because of this woman. Arbor now felt very annoyed whenever he saw Su Shitao and just wanted her to shut up. Su Shitao squatted until her legs went numb. She didn't even hear Arbor telling her to get up. A rush of blood rushed to her brain. The grievance in his heart was unstoppable. Who dared to give her attitude when she was in King Zheng's residence? All the servants in the mansion called her Princess Tao and flattered her. How could he be despised to this extent after casually entering the Duke of Huainan's mansion? Not only was he treated differently from the others when he entered, but he was also beaten up by the crown princess subordinates at the entrance. Now that the damned crown princess had seen her, she was picking on her again. She had already bowed to her in such a humble manner. What else did she want? Did she want to ascend to the heavens? The furious Su Shitao's mind went blank for a moment. He was so angry that he immediately straightened his body and roared, "Are you deliberately targeting me? Audacious!" Kai Xiu was also infuriated by this woman. These days, there were not many people who dared to be so impudent in front of the little crown princess. Many of the noble ladies took a few steps back in unison, and all of them huddled together on both sides of the road. Their eyes were filled with an inexplicable trace of fear. Crown Princess, I still have some matters to attend to in the residence. I will take my leave first. Crown Prince Consort, this subject is also, with past experience, no one dared to stay here and wait for the little Crown Princess to make a scene. Because at this moment, everyone was very clear that they didn't want to live too long just to watch the show. This fire could burn them at any moment. Not everyone's drama could be watched blindly. At the very least, they didn't dare to look at the Crown Princess in front of them. Perhaps he would have to suffer together with that brainless Miss Sue. The young Crown Prince Consort gave an expressionless grunt of acknowledgement, but the noble ladies hurriedly retreated as though they had been pardoned. Just as they were about to leave one by one, they heard Fang Mingyue's exasperated roar from behind them. What are you doing? Are you that afraid of the Crown Princess? Could it be that the ladies present don't even dare to say a word of justice? The noble ladies looked at each other in dismay and cried out in unison. Oh, please, Miss Fang is not afraid of death. If you want to help Princess Tao deal with the little Crown Princess, you can do it yourselves. Don't involve us, okay? It's obviously the Crown Princess who is bullying others. Even so, you don't dare to say a word of justice. At this moment, Fang Mingyue was so angry that she stood up straight. She stomped her feet and said angrily, I don't know how Mingyue offended the Crown Princess to make you dislike Mingyue so much that you want to punish us by making us kneel. Arbor lifted her small chin slightly. Kai Xiu and Kai Chi both understood and hurriedly stepped forward. Without saying anything, one of them kicked Fang Mingyue's back, and the other kicked Su Shitao's back. Their movements were exactly the same. As for Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao, their movements of being kicked to the ground were exactly the same. Chapter 51-55. With two thuds, the two girls miserably fell to the ground. They were so angry that they couldn't help but want to curse. Crown Princess, so long-winded. The young Crown Princess shouted. Behind Saishio, two tall and burly old mamas immediately followed behind her. They raised their hands and slapped Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao on their faces. You dare to be so impudent in front of the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess ordered you to kneel, and you dare to make faces. Young Miss Su, second young Miss Fang, this old servant can only make an exception today to teach you the rules of seniority. Arbor expressionlessly watched the two old nannies give the two young misses a few slaps. Hearing the two's wretched screams, she couldn't help but frown. Stuff their mouths. Kai Chi waved her hand and shouted. Fang Mingyue was so angry that her insides burned, and she completely lost her sense of propriety. In this residence, she was pampered by her parents every day and doted on in every way. Who in the residence dared to be so bold and rude to her? This Crown Princess was abominable to the extreme. Fang Mingyue screamed and pushed away the two old nannies beside her. She jumped high, her hair disheveled as she screamed, I'll fight it out with you. Everyone was startled. Young Miss Jiang couldn't help but exclaim, second young Miss Fang, you can't. However, Fang Mingyue had long been blinded by anger. She raised her fist and rushed towards the young Crown Princess. Two hidden guards instantly blocked the young Crown Princess. Two pairs of cold eyes stared coldly at the person rushing over, as if they were looking at a corpse. Arbor only waved his hand indifferently and stood up from the chair, rolling up his small sleeves while he was at it. Move aside. You men don't need to interfere in the matters between women. The two hidden guards, when Madame Lu of the Duke of Huainan's estate heard the servant who hurriedly came to report that the second young miss had offended her superior and violently punched the pregnant Crown Princess, she almost fainted on the spot. Her entire body went limp on Wei Ziqin. Wei Ziqin was even more anxious. She stood up and shouted angrily, "Where is he?" The servant was startled and quickly shouted, It's at the koi pond in the willow garden." The madam of the Duke of Huainan's mansion was so angry that she almost fainted. She hurriedly stood up with the help of someone. When she was about to step out of the front hall, she almost bumped into a woman who rushed into the door. That woman was decked out in gold and silver, and when she saw the sickly madam in front of her, she immediately cried out, "Madam, you have to uphold justice for second young miss." "What do I have to do? What can I do for her? Your daughter is so audacious that she even dares to lay her hands on the crown princess who is pregnant with a dragon fetus. I think she and you don't want to live anymore." Second Yang couldn't help but wail loudly. She held Madam's hand and refused to let go. "Madam, we don't know what exactly happened in this matter. How can you be so sure that it was second miss who made a move on the crown princess first? We'll know whether it's true or not when we go take a look." First Madam brusquely flung her hand away and said with a stern expression, "Moreover, so what if the crown princess made a move first? Can your daughter retaliate when the crown princess made a move? Let me tell you, don't say that the crown princess is pregnant with a dragon fetus right now and can't take the slightest fright. Even if she didn't. She hit your daughter, you have to endure it for me. You even rebelled and wanted to retaliate. You've lost your mind. I've always said that you have to teach your daughter well." Chapter 51-56. And the result? You didn't listen. Now you've caused such a disaster for my family. Let me ask you, can you bear the responsibility? Second concubine sobbed and cried, "First Madam, you can't leave my Mingyue alone." Old concubine Fong watched Mingyue grow up. "If anything happens to her, we can't explain it to old concubine and old concubine." "Explain it. I think you'd better explain it to His Majesty and the Empress first. If anything happens to the little imperial grandson, our entire family, your daughter, your mother, your 7 aunts, 8 aunts, 3 uncles, 6 aunts, and even that dog on the street, none of them will be able to escape." Young Madame Bao immediately slumped to the ground, unable to raise her head after being scolded by First Madam. She wanted to reach out and hug First Madam's leg, but she was kicked hard and rolled to the door. The old servant behind First Madam was also very fierce. She stepped on young Madam's foot and crushed the back of young Madam's hand before leaving with First Madam. "Ah!" Young Madame Bao twitched in pain and shook the back of her hand several times. She turned to the maidservant behind her with tears in her eyes. The maidservant also cried, "Second Madam, we have to hurry over. Otherwise, second miss will be at a disadvantage." Young Madame Bao gritted her teeth and quickly stood up from the ground with the help of the maidservant's hand. Go quickly. Sanchi, let Sanchi go to the front yard to invite old master. Right now, only her husband could save her precious daughter. Her Mingyue, why did she provoke that fiend crown prince consort for no reason? First Madam and Wei Ziqin hurried to Willow Courtyard and almost fainted again as soon as they walked in. If it weren't for the 2 old servants supporting First Madam's body, First Madam would have already lost her balance. "Madam, don't worry. Take a closer look. The crown princess seems to be fine." Wei Ziqin was also very anxious, but when she saw her daughter in the distance, her heart calmed down. Her daughter had never been bullied since she was young, so it was unlikely that she would be beaten up by the second miss of the Fong family. Therefore, the servant who sent the message must have misunderstood something. First Madam calmed herself down and took a closer look. Only then did she see clearly what was going on. There seemed to be 4 transparent seals around the little crown princess, trapping her within. As for the unreasonable second miss, she seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. She had gotten a large shovel from somewhere and was pounding on the impenetrable seal wall in front of her. Beside him stood 2 black-clothed secret guards with indifferent expressions. First Madam took a closer look and felt that these 2 young men had a hopeless look on their faces. "What's going on?" First Madame hurriedly asked the servants who were watching by the pond. The servant knelt down and said, "Madam, it's second Mississippi. She's gone mad. Crazy." First Madame's face looked as though it had been painted with a layer of black paint. She was so angry that her liver hurt. She has indeed gone mad. He even dared to hit the crown princess. He really didn't want to live anymore. Why aren't you pulling him away? Are all of you dead? The servant was about to cry. It's not that we don't want to pull him away. It's just that the crown princess said to let second miss hit him and not to care about her. First Madame looked a little confused and didn't know what was going on. The little crown princess sat upright in the seal array. Her gaze was cold as she watched the second miss violently pounding on the barrier. Chapter 51-57. Eldest Madame was so angry that she was about to ascend to the heavens and leave her body. She berated, "The Count estate actually produced such a disrespectful thing like you. Why aren't you arresting this rebellious dog?" Madame Nei Lu shouted angrily. The servants didn't dare to tarry this time and hastily swarmed forward to tug at the unreasonable second Miss Fong. Second Miss Fong had long lost her head from anger. She had been chipping away at that defensive wall for so long, but she hadn't even managed to open a freaking small hole. She was so angry that she jumped up and down and cursed non-stop. Now that she saw people coming to arrest her, she used a large shovel to hit them. Two servants were caught off guard and were hit in the head by her shovel, bleeding profusely on the spot. Madame was so angry that she clutched her chest and cursed repeatedly, "Rebellion, rebellion, rebellion, rebellion. Are you all dead? Go up, bring her over here." Several burly mamas, along with several guards, dashed over. 3 to 5 people pressed second Miss Fong to the ground and forcefully pinned her arms behind her back. They finally managed to subdue this shrew with great difficulty. The little crown princess sat inside her defensive wall from beginning to end and expressionlessly watched the commotion outside. Wei Ziqin hastily walked over. Separated by the defensive wall, her mouth involuntarily twitched as she called out, "Jojo." Arbor waved his hand and removed the defensive wall. He left his stool and strode to his mother's side to greet her. Wei Ziqin was too embarrassed to ask if her daughter was all right. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was completely fine. It was better not to ask the obvious, "Mom." Arbor glanced at his mother and felt that his mother's expression was a bit conflicted and strange. Wei Ziqin coughed lightly and patted her daughter's small hand. It's fine. Mom just wanted to ask you, what exactly happened?" She was fine when she left just now, so how did second Miss Fong provoke her daughter so fearlessly in such a short time? The little stoic pursed her lips and said, "How would I know?" Wei Ziqin, he suddenly felt that he had nothing to say to his daughter. Fong Luiying, who was still standing by the side, hurriedly said, "Madam, there's no need to worry. Actually, it's nothing serious. It's just that second sister's reaction was too extreme." How exactly did second miss offend the crown princess? First Madame reprimanded her harshly. The maids, whose faces were covered in dirt, lay on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. They could only mumble obsequiously. We heard from second miss, it seems like the crown princess, she. The maidservants were so scared that they didn't dare to finish their sentence. Standing by the pond, Su Shitao, who was covered in dust and dirt, couldn't help but scream. What else could it be? If she didn't abuse her power to bully others, how could second young miss possibly fight with her? Shut up. Who are you? First Madame stared at Su Shitao and asked coldly. Irritated by Mrs. Lu's contemptuous gaze, Su Shitao's anger erupted on the spot. Who am I? Who am I? She was so angry that her nose and mouth were slightly crooked. I am a guest invited by your Count of Huainan's estate. I am Princess Tao of the Prince of Zheng's estate. Your estate must give me an explanation for this matter. Damn it, these people, all of them didn't take her, Su Shitao, seriously at all. They kept asking who she was. Who was she? Shouldn't everyone know who she was? Chapter 51-58. She, impudent. Who are you referring to? First Madam shouted. Immediately, two nannies stepped forward and slapped Su Shitao's hand, which was pointing in the direction of Arbor. Su Shitao was so angry that his eyes turned red, but he hadn't shouted yet. He was frightened by the second young Miss Fong's piercing voice. Fong Mingyue was so angry that she couldn't stop kicking and twisting her body. She was tied up with a rope by 3 to 5 servants and the old nannies. They dragged her to First Madam and pressed her body down to kneel on the ground. Seeing that she was disobedient, the nannies were so angry that they pinched her arm a few times. Fong Mingyue shouted even louder. She exerted force on her wrists and flung one of the old nannies away. She kicked a servant in the chest. Everyone only heard a crisp, crack sound. That person flew out and was heavily thrown into the corner of the wall. Her head tilted and she was on the verge of death. It could be seen that Fong Mingyue's kick was a killing move. The second young miss climbed up from the ground in a sorry state. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You dare to treat me like this? You wicked servants! See if I don't cripple you all." The servants and old nannies were all silent out of fear. At this moment, they suddenly saw First Madam raise her hand and let a few nimble guards subdue the second young Mississippi. They couldn't help but sigh in relief. After all, the second young Miss's martial arts were not bad and her cultivation was already a level 5 spiritual master. It was indeed difficult for these low-level servants to deal with her. However, the guards beside First Madam were different. Each of them was a level 6 or 7 spiritual master. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with the second young Mississippi. Let go of me, you wicked servants. How dare you? Let go, let go. Second young Miss Fong screamed. Her kicks and bites couldn't stop the guards from dragging her. They threw her in front of First Madam. Fong Mingyue felt like a dead dog being thrown to the ground. A trace of humiliation and hatred burned from the bottom of her heart. Mrs. Liu, you dare to treat me like this? Aren't you afraid that when my father comes, he will give you 2 slaps? At this moment, First Madam had already been helped to sit down. When she heard Fong Mingyue's words, she immediately sneered, "Fong Mingyue, you are indeed very bold. You dare to speak so presumptuously in front of your official mother. It seems that all these years, I have indeed neglected to discipline you concubine-born sons and daughters. That's why your concubine mother has taught you to be so undisciplined and out of control. Men, slap him." Fong Mingyue was forced to kneel on the ground by the 2 guards. She couldn't move at all. She could only watch the fierce-looking old maid beside Madam rolling up her sleeves and walking towards her. Fong Mingyue immediately screamed in panic, What are you doing? You dare to hit me? My father won't let you off. Father. Father. Mother. Father. Slap. A heavy slap interrupted Fong Mingyue's mournful cries. With this slap, Fong Mingyue only felt her mouth fill with a salty and wet taste. The maidservant Xiao Mian had sharp eyes and called out, "Young miss, your mouth is broken. You're bleeding." Fong Mingyue was so angry that she almost fainted. Since she was young, when had she ever suffered such grievances? That old maid was really ruthless. With 3 slaps, her ears buzzed and she saw stars. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and tears and snot flowed down her face. Chapter 51-59. Mingyue, my pitiful child ah. Little Madame Bao cried out in a shrill voice and stumbled towards them. She threw herself at her daughter and hugged her head tightly. She shouted, "Who dares to come forward? Who dares to touch my daughter? If anyone dares to touch my daughter, I will fight them to the death. Pull second madam away, first madam said coldly. Madam, do you want to beat my daughter to death? Little Madam Bao glared at first madam with a pair of venomous eyes and shouted angrily, you can't do this. My daughter is beautiful. If she is injured, can your Lu family bear this responsibility? Fong Luiying immediately stood in front of her mother and shouted angrily, second madam, you dare to speak to madam like this. If you want to beat my daughter to death, then beat me to death first. Even if I become a malicious spirit in my next life, I won't let you evil people off. What are you all doing? A man's angry shout came from the entrance of Willow Courtyard. For a moment, the bustling noises all fell silent. I've made a fool of myself in front of the heir and lords. Count Huainan Fong Xiangui cupped his hands at a young gentleman behind him. The heir of the Duke of Jianping, Mo Kuan, had been waving the folding fan in his hand with a flirtatious smile. However, when he saw the little crowned princess's expressionless face, he instantly froze. He almost knelt down in front of Count Huainan. You should have said earlier that you invited the crown princess. If you said you invited her, we wouldn't have come. Aren't you tricking your father? Of all the people you could trick, you tricked your grandfather. His father, the old Duke of Jianping, was very wise not to come. Why did he have to come to the Count of Huainan's estate? This time, he met the little fiend. The heir of the Duke of Jianping slapped himself in the face. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment, their eyes wide open and their mouths wide open. Heir. Count Huainan looked at this young gentleman in confusion. Mo Kuan came back to his senses and silently lit a candle for himself. He smiled stiffly, just now, there seemed to be, a mosquito. Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement, surrounding him like stars surrounding the moon. However, Mo Kuan took a few steps back and deliberately put on a nonchalant expression. He waved his hand and said, since Count Huainan has family matters to attend to, then this heir will not disturb you any further. Goodbye. Your Highness. Your Highness. Seeing that the crown prince was about to flee, everyone was speechless. Stop right there. A clear voice rang out. Everyone watched as Mo Shitzi, who had run to the entrance of the garden in 3 steps, fell to his knees with a plop. The speed at which Prince Jianping's face changed was truly breathtaking. When he turned around while kneeling, a smile blossomed on his face like a blooming flower. Little brother greets sister-in-law. Hello, sister-in-law. What bad things did you do? The little stoic shouted coldly. The heir of the Duke of Jianping was about to cry. He looked at Arbor innocently and said, No, I didn't do anything bad. No one knew that before he answered this question, his mind had gone through 1,000 twists and turns, recalling everything he had done in the past 5 days. He really didn't do anything bad. Then why did you run away when you saw me? Sir Jojo shouted, You have a guilty conscience. Did you go out on the streets to rob an innocent girl again? Chapter 5160. I don't dare, this younger brother doesn't dare. Mo Kuan waved his hand miserably. This younger brother has been abstaining from meat and reciting Buddhist scriptures at home recently. I'm abstinent of worldly desires and charitable deeds. Even royal father said that this younger brother has recently made great progress. The little stoic pulled a long face. Is that so? Yes. The king of Jianping's heir nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. He said pitifully, Sister-in-law. Ever since this younger brother was taught a lesson by you. Then completely turned over a new leaf and became a new person. My royal brothers, can all testify. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but twitch her mouth, and she looked at this child sympathetically. Look at how scared this child was. Their family's Jojo's deterrence was increasingly surpassing Ling Ran's. If I find out that you're doing any illegal activities again, even your father can't protect you. Be careful of your dog head. Arbor clenched his fists tightly, and a handful of fine sand leaked out from between his fingers. Mo Kuan nearly pissed himself in fright, and he scrambled forward while howling repeatedly, "Sister-in-law, sister-in-law. I swear. I've already been taught a lesson by you, sister-in-law. I won't bully the villagers again, won't do any bad things again. Fuck, lil' sister-in-law is getting scarier." Such a sturdy rock turned into fine sand in a matter of minutes in her small hands. Woo-woo, how scary. How can elder brother stand such a shrew? So scary, women are so scary. Woo-woo. The little crown princess clapped her hands and waved expressionlessly like she was swatting a fly. Let's go. Thank you, sister-in-law, thank you, sister-in-law. Prince Mo was scared witless. He covered his head and scurried out of Willow Courtyard like a rat. He reckoned that he would have to take a detour whenever he saw Count Huainan's estate for the next 3 years. It was too scary. It was simply traumatizing. Prince Mo scurried out of Count Huainan's estate with his head in his hands and almost bumped into someone. Hey, little Kuan, what are you doing? Why are you walking so carelessly? You almost bumped into the crown prince. A helpless voice rang next to his ear. Mo Kuan's tease. The crown prince, who was dressed in a brocade robe and had his hair tied up by a jade crown, was staring at him with a serious expression. The crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace and the crown prince of the Duke of Linchuan followed behind. The one who spoke was the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace, Mo Lu, who was looking at him sympathetically. He winked at him, telling him to be tactful. Big brother. I didn't do anything, I really don't have one. Mo Lien looked at him expressionlessly. Why do you look so guilty? Did you offend your sister-in-law again? His wife still had to follow his mother-in-law to Count Huainan's mansion on rainy days. She hadn't come back for so long, so he had to pick her up. The crown prince was in a bad mood when he saw Mo Kuan. This fellow was running away like a rat. He must have provoked Charles again. No, big brother. Mo Kuan waved his hand pitifully. Big brother, I've turned over a new leaf. The corner of Mo Lu's mouth twitched. He lowered his head and coughed softly. Elder brother, I see that little Kuan hasn't gone out to cause any trouble recently. He should have learned well. Mo Kuan nodded repeatedly and cast a grateful glance at the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace. Mo Lien looked at him coldly. Have you seen your sister-in-law? Yes, I saw her. She's inside. Mo Kuan hurriedly said, there's a crazy woman. She's hitting my sister-in-law. Big brother, you should quickly go in and take a look. This person's brain went haywire and he almost bit his tongue after saying that. What? Chapter 5161. Mo Kuan couldn't care that much now. In any case, he was already unlucky enough. No matter what, he had to drag a few more unlucky people down with him. As long as he could successfully divert his brother's attention to others, he didn't care who he harmed. It was fine as long as he was fine. Greetings to the crown princess. Count Huainan stepped forward and bowed to Arbor with a complicated expression. Just based on the behavior of the Prince of Giant Pain's heir, he had a rough idea of this crown princess. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. Otherwise, why would the Prince of Giant Pain's heir be scared witless and run away? Moreover, which of the people around him wasn't a reputable official in court? But they all respectfully stepped forward to greet her with smiles like a spring breeze. Which one of them wasn't extremely courteous to the crown princess? From this, it could be seen that this expressionless little crown princess was quite powerful. Count Huainan's heart was in turmoil. He lowered his head to look at the weeping Madame Bao and his second daughter. He deliberated and said, "Crown Princess, please forgive my daughter. My daughter is still young and doesn't know the rules. I don't know why she offended the Crown Princess." Husband. Madame Bao hugged her daughter and cried bitterly, "Husband, you have to save us. Madame is forcing us to our deaths." Count Huainan coldly swept a glance at first Madame Lu. The latter didn't fear his cold gaze at all. She seemed to be used to Count Huainan's attitude and coldly replied, "Husband, you don't know. When this madam came just now, I saw second miss punching and kicking the Crown Princess through the defensive wall. This is the attitude of an official. Is this the upbringing of second madam in our Count Huainan's mansion?" Count Huainan was rebuked by first madam and was so angry that he couldn't speak for a while. In the end, he only said dryly, "Then you don't have to beat them to death. Husband, I'm not criticizing you, but there should be a limit to how much you spoil your daughter. Outsiders don't know and think that this madam doesn't know how to teach a concubine's daughter. But you don't know that in our Duke of Huainan's mansion, the daughters of concubines are raised and educated under the feet of concubines. Even madam can't interfere or make the decision." "Madam!" Madame Bao shouted angrily and angrily. "Did I say anything wrong?" First Madame Lu sneered, "Today, Fang Mingyue dared to be so impudent and boldly offend the Crown Princess. Isn't it all because Lord and second concubine spoiled her? Master, look at what Madame is saying." Little Madame Bao was furious. She clutched her chest and shouted, "How can this be caused by me and Master spoiling her? It's clearly, what is it?" First Madam couldn't help but sneer. Could it be that this stupid woman wanted to push all the blame to the little Crown Princess? She was too stupid, too hopeless. "All right, stop arguing." The Count of Huainan, Fang Xiangui, felt his face burning. With so many officials and colleagues present, his own family was in such a chaotic situation. How could he, the Count of Huainan, show his face? Crown Princess. Count of Huainan cupped his hands at the little stoic Crown Princess. "Please forgive my daughter's momentary anger for the sake of Grand Consort Fang." The little Crown Princess said crisply, "Unforgivable." Wei Ziqin covered her mouth with her handkerchief and coughed lightly to cover the laughter that almost came out. Her miss was a bit adorable no matter how she looked at her. Then she looked at second miss, who was kneeling on the ground with disheveled hair and a sorry figure, and felt even more disgusted. Chapter 5162. Count Huainan's old face stiffened slightly before he hurriedly smiled apologetically. "Crown Princess, please forgive this old official's second daughter. She offended you just now and offended the Crown Princess. The two of them punched and kicked me in front of everyone." The young Crown Princess pointed at Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao. "They." Her small face was extremely solemn. "Beat me." Everyone, the Crown Princess could actually say these words so smoothly. "Beat you? Who beat you?" No, beat you." She used a large shovel and kept hitting the defensive wall, but she didn't even touch a single strand of hair. "That counts as beating?" Count Huainan was drenched in cold sweat as he thought, today's matter is going to be troublesome. If the young Crown Princess was unwilling to relent and let his second daughter off, then today's matter wouldn't be so easily resolved. Count Huainan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead as his mind spun. He couldn't help but forcefully explain, "Actually, this matter, you can't completely blame Mingyue." Arbor turned to glare at Count Huainan. "Who else can you blame if not her? If she didn't insist on inviting this Crown Princess to this willow courtyard to look at some koi fish, how could there be so many troublesome matters?" The young Crown Princess pointed at Fang Mingyue. "It's her, she was the one who insisted on inviting me over." If Count Huainan could beat someone right now, he really wanted to raise his hand and slap his youngest daughter. "Are you stupid? Are you bored out of your mind? Why did you have to provoke such a big figure for no reason? You invited her over, and now you're riding a tiger and can't get off. It's really easier to invite the devil than to send the devil away. Crown Princess. Can't she speak herself? Why does she keep asking you to interrupt her? The young Crown Princess waved her hand impatiently, directly interrupting Count Huainan's words. Just now, she hit this princess 168 times. Now, this consort wants to return the favor to her. Do you think this is fair? Everyone looked at the little Crown Princess in bewilderment. They saw that the Crown Princess's little stoic face was brimming with a sense of righteousness and seriousness. Her expression looked very serious. Everyone didn't think much of it and nodded their heads in agreement. There was nothing wrong with that. He had hit the Crown Princess 168 times, so it was reasonable for the Crown Princess to demand that he return the favor. Big bow. The young Crown Prince Consort shouted. A small golem covered in black light emerged from the star field with a whoosh. The moment he landed, his body expanded to the height of an adult. He cupped his fists at Fang Xiangui's family and said, "Uncle Fang, sorry for the offense. The Crown Princess has ordered that second Miss Fang be beaten 168 times. Execute it now. Anyone who obstructs the execution will be beaten as well." Then, under Fang Xiangui's stupefied expression, the golem moved and jumped forward. Without another word, he picked up second Miss Fang, who was lying in Madame Bao's arms, and punched her chest. Ah! Second Miss Fang was hit to the ground, and she curled up in pain. The golem de Bao didn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex and stood up by grabbing second Miss Fang's hair. Like a sack of rice, she grabbed second Miss Fang in her hands and slammed her left and right. Madame Bao fainted from anger. The maidservants and nannies on the side anxiously called out, "Second madam, second madam, second madam." Fang Xiangui gaped at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Chapter 5163. This Crown Prince Consort, in front of him, in front of all the court officials, just like this, treated her daughter like a piece of rag, letting the mechanical puppet swing her back and forth for fun. His old face was so angry that it was distorted, and he was panting heavily. If he could make a decision, he definitely would not let her treat his daughter like this. But now, who could help him? Stop! Fang Xiangui finally could not hold back his anger. Stop! Tell me clearly, which crazy woman has the guts to hit your sister-in-law? When Mo Yen stepped into Willow Courtyard with a cold face, she immediately saw the situation. The golem, de Bao, was currently showing off its might in the garden, holding a rag in its hand, and was currently flinging it left, right, up, down, and down. There were only dong 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 sounds that sounded like heads hitting the brick floor, and for a moment, people were dazzled. The Duke of Eternal Peace's heir, Mo Lu, could not help but raise his hand to support his forehead. He coughed lightly and said, "Elder brother, this place is so messy. Why don't we go to the front hall and wait for sister-in-law?" At this time, Mo Yen had already silently retracted her leg from Willow Courtyard's entrance. She expressionlessly made an "n" sound. "It's so messy, let's go." Mo Kuan, this brat, sure enough, nothing good can come out of a dog's mouth. How was this a crazy woman violently beating his wife? Wasn't this his wife teaching some unlucky fellow a lesson? His wife was teaching someone a lesson, so he could not spoil his dear little cutie's mood. He quickly retreated and went to the front hall to wait for her. Mo Kuan held onto a large tree with one hand, trembling as he hid behind the tree, only daring to reveal two black eyes. As he looked, he could not help but shudder. Lil, sister-in-law, was definitely not to be provoked. Once provoked, she would immediately go berserk. Who the hell could endure this? Ah! Your Highness. It's His Highness the Crown Prince. Fang Boy's eyes were really sharp. He caught a glimpse of Prince Mo's figure that was about to leave Willow Garden and immediately called out loudly. As if he had seen a relative he hadn't seen in 800 years, he rushed forward with tears in his eyes and knelt on the ground with a plop. He said in a tearful voice, "I beg your highness to uphold justice for this humble subject. My second daughter is about to be taught a lesson by the crown princess. Your highness, please give the order for the crown princess to stop." The group of old courtiers looked at each other and stared at Grand Duke Fong as if they were looking at an idiot. Was there something wrong with this guy's head? It was well known that the crown prince doted on his wife. Who in the entire divine land did not know this? Don't you see that even the crown prince doesn't want to get involved in this mess? You actually ran to his highness to look for trouble. You even dare to ask his highness to issue an edict to order the crown princess to let your daughter go. Did you eat some lofty leopard's guts? You're so arrogant that there's no end to it. At this moment, the little crown princess also saw her husband and her eyes suddenly brightened. When Mo Lien saw Xiao Qiao's expression, he joyfully strode forward and grasped her hand as he said, "Xiao Qiao, Xiao Qiao, did you know that the rain outside has stopped? Since it's not raining, let's go back." Fong Boy looked at His Highness the Crown Prince in astonishment. His Highness did not seem to care about what he said just now. Why did he say something completely unrelated the moment he opened his mouth? If that was the case, could it be that his tearful words just now were all for nothing? Chapter 51-64. At this moment, De Bayo had completed his 168th beating. He also released second young Miss Fong and threw her to the side. His gaze then turned to Su Shitao, who was hiding at the side. Su Shitao was about to faint from fright. Her entire body trembled as she cried out in alarm, don't come over. Arbor, make this beast stay away from me. If you dare to treat me like this, my Prince Zheng's estate will not let you off." "How do you want to not let her off?" Prince Mo, who originally had a gentle smile on his face, immediately turned ruthless. His cold and sharp gaze shot toward Su Shitao. The latter jumped in fright and almost fell to the ground. Su Shitao's lips trembled, and her entire body couldn't help but shiver. She shook her head and said, Your Highness Crown Prince, I didn't mean it that way." Arbor raised his small hand and ordered, "De Bayo." "Yes, little master." De Bayo jumped in front of Su Shitao. His metal square face revealed a comical smile at her. "You just beat Master 168 times. According to the rules, all of this should be returned to you. Now, I'm going to beat you 68 times. Are you convinced?" I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced." Su Shitao shrieked, When did I beat her 168 times? The one who beat her through the defensive wall was Fong Mingyue from the beginning to the end. Not me, not me. Master said you beat her, so you beat her." The golem roared angrily. It stretched out its legs and jumped. Its jumping power was excellent, and it quickly pounced in front of Fong Mingyue. Without a word, it picked her up and beat her up just like how it had done before. Su Shitao covered her face and cried out bitterly. She kept shouting, big brother, save me, big brother." The little crown princess clenched her fists. She wanted little steel teeth and said nonchalantly, "Beat them up until they have to make a detour when they see me in the future." Annoying. Who had the time to chat with these orioles and swallows every few days? If she couldn't raise them properly, she would beat them up until they were all obedient when they saw her in the future. When the Empress received the news, it was already dinner time. Hearing that the young crown princess retaliated against the miss of Prince Zheng's mansion and the second miss of Count Huainan's mansion, she held her chopsticks in a daze. Empress? Empress? Zhenju, who was always by her side, called out to her softly. The Empress came back to her senses and said with a sigh, "She looks like me. She looks exactly like me when I was young. If she could make a move, she would make a move. Who would be willing to talk nonsense with you all day long?" She was indeed by Wuxia's daughter-in-law. She was still as elegant as she was back then. The corners of the palace servants' mouths twitched. They coughed lightly and lowered their heads without saying a word. Men, pass on my orders. The Count of Huainan did not teach his daughter well, so he was fined half a year of his salary and suspended from court for half a month. As for the second miss of the Fong family, she actually dared to beat up the crown princess and the young imperial grandson in public. Just punish her. Punish her to go to Ziyun nunnery to cultivate for half a month, so that she can get rid of the evil aura all over her body. Crown Princess, the Fong family sent an apology gift. There are a total of 3 carriages parked outside the palace. The little crown princess was fiddling with a poisonous plant that she had recently cultivated. When she heard this, she didn't even raise her head. Accept it. What apology gift? It was clearly a gift from Fong Luiying to thank her. First, Madame Lu's illness should be getting better. Little Madame Bao followed her weeping daughter to the nunnery to take care of her. When she returned half a month later, eldest Madame's illness should have almost recovered. Chapter 5165. Dad, Big Brother, Boo-hoo. Su Shitao, who was in pain all over his body, lay on the bed and cried while pounding the bed, I don't care. I've been beaten to such a miserable state. I'm in pain all over. Big Brother, you must seek justice for me. He also gnashed his teeth and said, Kong, you must give your sister an explanation for this matter. Explanation. Eunuch, you asked His Highness to give Su Shitao an explanation. What does His Highness want to explain? How can he explain it? Can His Highness climb over the wall to the East Palace with a sword and beat the Crown Princess in front of the Crown Prince? Or can he rush to His Majesty and the Empress with a whip and ask for an explanation? Consort Shi Yongyan sneered, Su Shitao, if you ask your big brother to seek justice, who can do it for your big brother? Sister-in-law. His Majesty said that Count Huainan didn't manage his family well, and his family was in chaos. He couldn't even manage his family well, let alone deal with the court affairs. Now, His Majesty personally issued an edict to punish Count Huainan's salary. Not only that, but he also ordered Count Huainan not to attend the court for half a month. Do you know how Count Huainan's unruly girl is now? She was sent to Ziyun nunnery by the imperial family to cultivate. His Majesty said that if she can't learn the rules and wash away the hostility on her, she shouldn't return to the capital. Do you understand? Don't return to the capital. Do you think His Majesty doesn't want to punish you? But you're smart enough not to fight with the Crown Princess directly. So His Majesty can't find a reason to punish you. But your brother, your big brother, he was implicated because of you. His Majesty even dismissed him from the inspection mission in Guangnan City and sent other imperial envoys to him. Enough. Mo Shikang shouted angrily and stopped Consort Shi Yongyan's endless words. Shi Yongyan couldn't help sneering. She glanced at Su Shitao, who was lying on the bed and howling, and her eyes were full of disdain and disgust. Do you think the second daughter of Count Huainan will have a good life in the future? The person she offended was the Crown Princess. Right now, the entire capital knows about her feisty temper. Do you think she can find a good family in the future? Who would marry such a girl? A woman who had been ordered by the emperor to go to Ziyun nunnery to cultivate, devote herself to doing good deeds, and wash away her hostility, who else would dare to want her? She's completely finished. Have you said enough? Mo Shikang roared. Sister-in-law, I know. Do you dislike our family? Do you think that our family has come back and divided your properties in the prince's mansion? You've always despised our family. You think that we're outsiders and shouldn't fight with you for the gold, silver, pearls, and jade of this prince's mansion, and shouldn't come back to annoy you, right? But I am Big Brother's younger sister after all. Before you say these heart-piercing words, have you ever thought that I am your sister-in-law, Big Brother's younger sister? I'm just speaking the truth. If I said something unpleasant, please forgive me, younger sister. Princess Consort Jing could not help but sneer. I know. Sister-in-law, you've never treated us as your family. Younger sister, what are you talking about? You're His Highness's younger sister. How could His Highness not care about you? I'm sure Princess Consort doesn't have this idea. A soft voice emerged in the midst of all the crying and shouting. Chapter 5166. The Princess Consort of Zheng, Shi Yongyan, was so angry that she felt dizzy. She sat on the armchair and pursed her lips, her sharp eyes shooting mercilessly at the person who spoke. Lin Wan was so frightened that she almost jumped up from her stool. She hastily shrank to Mo Shikang's side and tightly clung to his sleeve, calling out pitifully, "Your Highness. Shi Yongyan, enough is enough." The man reached out and wrapped his arms around his beloved concubine's waist, glaring fiercely at Shi Yongyan. Shi Yongyan couldn't help but laugh out loud. As she laughed, tears flowed down uncontrollably. "Mo Shikang, sooner or later, you will be harmed by these people. There's no medicine for regret in this world." Today, she said these words and was unwilling to say anything else. Shi Yongyan threw down these words and immediately got up to leave. Su Shitao burst into tears and shrieked, "Big brother, look at sister-in-law, look at what my sister-in-law said. Is our family a plague? Don't we have the right to stay in the Prince of Zheng's fu? Younger sister, don't cry. The Princess Consort didn't mean it that way." Lin Wan hastily stepped forward to coax her. However, Su Shitao didn't give her any face and even flung her hand away in disdain. "Lin Shi, you're just a concubine. What are you doing in my room without any manners? Is this young lady's boudoir a place where a lowly person like you can enter?" Lin Shi seemed to be frightened. She stood up from the bed and retreated a few steps, one hand clutching her stomach as she looked at Su Shitao with teary eyes. "Tao, Mo Shikang berated and stepped forward to support his beloved concubine. Su Shitao pounded the bed and shouted angrily, "Big brother. You actually yelled at your own younger sister for this shameless concubine. This woman came to our fu with no status and a pregnant belly. Do you know that the streets and alleys outside are all talking about your romantic affairs? Everyone is laughing at our Prince of Zheng's fu. How do you want me, an unmarried girl, to find a good family to marry in the future? Others think that our Prince of Zheng's fu is foul and full of shameless sluts." "Shut up." Mo Shikang was so angry that smoke was coming out of his head. His younger sister's words were like a slap to his face. Moreover, it was a series of slaps that burned his face. "Wu, Your Highness, this concubine cannot live anymore." Mrs. Lin called out coquettishly and threw herself into Mo Shikang's arms. While rubbing her eyes, she cried, "This concubine actually insulted an unmarried miss like this. This concubine can only take my child to die with me. Wu, no one is willing to give this concubine and my child a way out." Mo Shikang hurriedly hugged her waist lovingly and whispered, "Wan, don't be sad. Sister is just spouting nonsense. Don't listen to her nonsense." As soon as he finished speaking, he glared angrily at Su Shitao and shouted sternly, "Tao, you're really too presumptuous and audacious. Big brother already told you not to provoke that crown prince consort, but you just didn't listen. Now that he's beaten up like this, he's not even willing to settle down even though he's bedridden. Your eldest sister-in-law is right about a few things. The Count of Huainan was fined his salary and suspended from court by the emperor. Big brother was also implicated by this matter. The incident in Guangnan City was a warning from the emperor to your big brother. If there's a next time, your big brother may also be unlucky. So you really have to cultivate your body and mind well. Don't make trouble again. During this time, stay at home and don't go anywhere." Chapter 5167. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun hung high above the treetops. Early in the morning, the little crown princess led a group of children to the imperial garden to stretch and do some morning exercises. Mo floated around her twice and kept circling around her. Arbor stopped what he was doing and tilted his head to look at her. Do you have something to say to me? Mo, who was floating around, nodded with a dazed expression. Arbor waved at her and asked her to sit beside him. What do you want to say? Why don't you try using my gold-beaded talisman pen and see if you can write on the jade talisman? Mo's ability to express herself was very problematic. She seemed to find it difficult to express what she wanted to say. Arbor wanted her to see if she could write down her request directly. Upon hearing this, the dazed Mo-ji repeatedly nodded her head. She circled Xiao Mu in circles and finally found a home for her. This soul floated down beside Arbor and held the gold-beaded talisman pen that Arbor took out. Sure enough, she carved a line of small words on the jade talisman. Arbor took the jade talisman and looked at it. He looked at her with a serious expression and asked hesitantly, Are you sure you want to do this? The dumbfounded Mo nodded. You saw me use medicine to save people before and thought that I might be able to make this kind of pill. So the last few times you circled around me, you actually wanted to ask for this? Mo nodded repeatedly. There was no expression on her dazed face, but Arbor could feel that she seemed to be relieved. It was as if she was finally able to express what she wanted to express. Her face was full of relief. But you're only half a soul right now. If you want this pill, Arbor suddenly paused and had a look of realization. You know where to find your main body, don't you? Mo nodded again. But once you start taking this pill, if you stop taking it one day, it might cause you to be poisoned. Also, if you continuously take it for 100 days, there might be no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this? Mo nodded without hesitation. Or perhaps, after you consume it, you will even forget about me. Mo was stunned. Then, he waved his hand at Arbor. Xiao Mu curled her lips in a rare smile as she patted this soul. I respect your decision and will give you the pill later. But before that, I have something for you. With a wave of her small hand, a ball of light flew to the top of her palm and floated up and down. Little Monkey, who was lying at the side, immediately jumped up and sniffed. Wow, there's the smell of an ancient sacred beast. Kong Kong, Guang Guang, the little monkey, and Mo all gathered around and stared at the ceiling light above Arbor's palm, blinking their eyes. Within the ball of light, there was a small snow-white thing curled up. Its entire body was buried in its large furry tail. Only a small snow-white horn on its small head could be seen swaying slightly. Arbor raised his hand and touched the ball of light. He sighed softly and said, This is the little unicorn that my master cut open. It was born before a month and was born with a congenital deficiency. That's why it grew very slowly. Perhaps it still needs 100 years or 1,000 years before it can awaken. Or perhaps, it won't be able to come out for generations. But I feel that it's very lonely. You're also very lonely. If the two of you can be companions in the future, it's actually quite good. Arbor said warmly. Chapter 5168. Just like a long, long time ago, Chocho and I were companions in the void. It's really hard to survive alone in such an empty place like the void. It's much better to have a companion by your side. Regardless of whether it could speak or not, regardless of whether it could wake up or not, as long as there was something by her side, she would at least feel that there was an end to her path. There was still some hope in life, wasn't there? Just as Arbor finished speaking, a small emerald head popped out from behind her neck. Chocho, who was rocking back and forth with 2 tender leaves on its head, called out, Master, don't be sad. Chocho will always be by your side. Why did Chocho feel like someone was holding its head and lifting it up? Its 2 black beady eyes kept blinking upwards. After looking for a while, it realized that Crown Prince had arrived at some point and was currently holding it up and throwing it behind his back. Chocho hurriedly used its 2 thin branches to hook onto his collar and hung it on the back of his neck. It huffed and puffed, Master, Crown Prince was a bad silver. Every time he saw Chio by the little master's side, he liked to throw it out and kick it out. Mo reached out to take the little unicorn's ball of light and held it in her hands. When her dazed face turned towards Arbor, she tried her best to squeeze out a stiff expression that didn't look like a smile. Arbor said expressionlessly, "This soul fragment of yours isn't like the main body. There's no need to force yourself to make a difficult expression." Mo hurriedly restrained the strange expression on her face and nodded repeatedly. She held the little unicorn and gestured with her hands. Little Monkey said from the side, "Big sister, my sister said that she also wants to give you something in return." "There's no need." Arbor's face was stoic as she said expressionlessly, "Your sister is penniless now. The Sun-Moon secret realm that she used to live in is now with me. What else could she have? What could she give?" Hee hee. Little Monkey hurriedly gestured at Mo and nodded repeatedly. "Big sister, you're right. My sister is a pauper now." Arbor glanced at Mo and saw her holding the ceiling light with both hands with a dazed expression. He couldn't help but facepalm. Mo laughed and said, "If you give it to her, she will only praise you like this. Don't tell me you want her to be like this for the rest of her life, holding on to this little unicorn." Arbor muttered, "It's so hard for me. I'm really worried about this dumb little fool." After pondering for a moment, she took out a jade tablet from her pocket and tossed it onto Mo's body. A red string was attached to the jade tablet and slowly hung it around Mo's neck. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief and said to himself, "Although it's only half a soul, it's still a powerful soul. It can still use the storage talisman." She instructed Mo to put the little unicorn into the storage talisman first. After doing all this, Mo lowered his head and caressed the jade talisman around his neck. He fondled it lovingly. "Why can a soul like her touch the storage talisman that you drew?" Mo couldn't help but ask curiously. "In the past, I couldn't see people with soul bodies. However, I can still touch this half-soul body of hers. How do I explain this?" Arbor pursed her lips and said with a rueful expression, "This is probably what they mean by, the 3,000 great Daos are all connected by a mysterious force." Little Monkey nodded profusely at the side. Big sister's meaning can be explained with one word, fate. Mo nodded and laughed loudly. Chapter 5169. "Mo, look here," Arbor suddenly called out to her. Mo, who was in a daze, turned his head and stared at her. The plain-clothed, wooden, and expressionless little stoic extended her right hand and spread open her fingers. Clusters of snowflakes trembled in her hand as if they had a mind of their own and formed a white sphere that continuously spun back and forth. The little stoic's eyes flickered, and she flicked her slender hand backwards. A snowball shot into the rockery behind her with a whoosh. In no more than a second, the entire rockery crumbled from the inside out with a rumble, shattering into a pile of mud and foam. Fortunately, she had already set up defensive walls around this area before she acted. The loud noise was completely isolated and didn't attract other people's attention. Mo's wooden eyes suddenly moved, and she subconsciously extended her hands and clapped with all her might. "Do you understand now?" Mo nodded vigorously. "Give it a try." Mo floated forward a few steps and extended her right hand accordingly. In a split second, clusters of electricity floated back and forth on her palm. However, even after a long while, she still couldn't fuse them into a sphere. Arbor expressionlessly walked to her side and demonstrated again. He asked coldly, "Do you remember now?" Mo nodded again. The little monkey standing behind them couldn't help but raise her hand to cover her face. She didn't know if it was her misconception, but she kept feeling like her older sister was an idiot. She nodded at everything she was asked, but when she did it, she was clumsy and didn't do anything properly. Arbor patiently repeated the process several times until Mo succeeded. She fused the clusters of electricity in her hand into a small ball of lightning and flew it over, exploding with considerable power from the inside out. The little monkey excitedly jumped up and clapped repeatedly, shouting, "Older sister, you succeeded." Mo looked at the little stoic with bright eyes and nodded repeatedly. She pointed at the small ball of lightning above her palm. However, Arbor merely glanced at her expressionlessly. He reached out and gently brushed aside the snowball in his hand. That snowball rapidly elongated and abruptly transformed into an ice bow. A long ice crystal arrowhead condensed in his right hand. With a single arrow, the row of ground in front of him exploded with a boom, as if millions of arrowheads had split open at the same time and exploded into pieces. Snow explosion spell, explosive arrow. 9 Heavens lightning sword. Skills chapter, Earthwood technique. Xiao Mu taught Mo the Spirit Division Records techniques that she had learned and mastered one move after another. She patiently demonstrated and practiced them over and over again until she grasped them. Lord Kong Kong and Lord Guang Guang supported their chins with one hand and sat at the stone table in a daze. Wow! What do you think the benefactress is doing? She wants to teach a second version of her. It's obvious. Lord Guang Guang nodded his little bald head. I really pity you weak chicken humans. One fierce woman is already very scary, and in the future, there will be 2 fierce women. How are you going to spend your days like this? Do you think should I recite a mind-clearing incantation for benefactress? What should we do with such a huge amount of hostility? As he spoke, the slow-witted Mo held a sword that flickered with lightning as he swiftly leaped down from the sky, and his sword seemed to have slashed apart the sky as he fiercely descended to the ground. Everything in this area of the garden was completely destroyed. Everything was reduced to nothingness when the sword fell. Amitba, flowers and grass are all living beings. Benefactresses, please don't cause any more destruction. The little monk puffed up his chubby cheeks and nagged very solemnly. Chapter 5170. Little Monkey jumped up and applauded with all his might. Although his sister was a little stupid, she was born with outstanding talent. Even if her intelligence was not high enough, her foundation was still there. In just half a day, she was able to learn so many moves. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Arbor kept his thunder sword and took a step forward. He raised his hand and patted Mo's shoulder. In the future, if someone chases you into the void, my sword will be the first to not let him off. Mo's mouth twitched, revealing a stiff smile. Little monk Kong Kong rested his chin on his hands. He turned his head and looked at Prince Mo who was sitting beside him. Under the golden sunlight, that elegant and handsome crown prince was also supporting his chin with his hands. He was staring at the female benefactor. There seemed to be a light flashing in his eyes. Your Highness, Crown Princess. Kai Xiu hurriedly walked along a small path and called out while looking back and forth. Arbor waved his hand and removed the defensive barrier. Kai Xiu turned her head and saw everyone appearing in front of her. She also saw the ruins of the rockery and the flower bed. She opened her mouth so wide that she could stuff a duck egg in it. Heavens, the Crown Prince and his wife, this early in the morning, said that they were going to take a stroll in the garden. They actually raised a corner of the garden to the ground. Let's go back and have lunch. Little Monkey jumped up and raised his little hand to cheer. Mo floated 2 steps forward and tilted her head to look forward. She saw that under the light of the sun, a beautiful woman in plain clothes was walking beside the Crown Prince. The fragrance of the 2 plants was like the background of a painting. In an instant it was as if it could be frozen into eternity and could never be forgotten. Friend. 2 words floated in her heart. Close friend. After the song ended, the leaves in the garden rustled down. The woman left the zither and stood up to bow to the roof in front of her. She stood there silently for a long time. For a long time, there was no sound in the garden. Only the cold wind brushed past her face. The woman in thin clothes slightly lowered her head. She did not make any sound. Until an unknown amount of time later, a faint voice came from the roof. "You can leave." Only then did the woman raise her head slightly and call out, "Young master." Young Master Omega Kotoku glanced at her coldly. Just this icy glare made Miss Rand swallow her words. After bowing, he turned around and left the garden. Chin Xian lay on the eaves and looked up at the dim starry sky. Holding a wine pot in one hand, he looked into the dark night with a cold gaze. Duguling floated to his side and sighed. "What should we do? I received the exact information today. That king of Duo Luo is completely useless now. I don't know if he's gone crazy or if he's lost his mind. In any case, he can't be used anymore. Many of the men we sent out have been encircled by the Crown Prince's men in the past 2 days, and there have been many casualties. Do you think there's a need to continue? I just didn't want him to be so happy." In the end, the decision she made herself even more unhappy. Chin Xian tossed the wine pot and flipped over to sit up. He drew a long sword with one hand and flew out of the room. He brandished his sword in the room to vent the anger in his heart. "If we attack the imperial city now, what do you think our chances of success are? With the resources and connections we have now, there's a chance of success, but the ancestor hasn't given the order. His theory of nibbling is already unrealistic." Chapter 5171. Right now, the heavenly fate has been exposed, and several underground bases have been destroyed. If we continue to develop according to his method of encroachment, we will be defeated one by one sooner or later. Omega Kotoku Young Master stabbed the camphor tree in front of him, leaving a deep sword mark on the tree. Second Young Master wants to. Dugu Ling stood behind him with a frown on his face. Acting on his own. Heh. Omega Kotoku Young Master sneered and put away the sword in his hand. He turned to look at Dugu Ling and said indifferently, "Ancestor is old in the end. Many of his decisions are no longer suitable due to the changes in the times." He raised his head and covered his eyes with one hand. He squinted his eyes and looked at the dim starry night sky. Just like many things, if you don't fight for them, you won't be able to get them even if they're placed in front of you. The Pill Hall's mutated pill is rumored to be in the final stage of development. Omega Kotoku Young Master's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. "Go and get one." "Young Master. That person inherited the power of the ancient Mo Lien. If we don't rely on external help, how can we defeat him?" Dugu Ling hurriedly bowed and said, "Please reconsider. This mutated pill was no joke. Once consumed, the young master might not have a high chance, but there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that he would turn into a corpse puppet." Of course, with the young master's talent, he didn't believe that would happen. At most, the young master would awaken a special ability. Look at little 5, isn't he doing well now? Omega Kotoku Young Master smiled faintly. "Say, since we're close to him, why don't we try it first?" "Ah, Xian," Dugu Ling called out helplessly. Chin Xian raised his hand to stop him from continuing and turned to walk out of the garden. "Tomorrow at this time, I want to see a level 5 mutated pill." Dugu Ling was silent for a moment. In the end, he didn't call out to him and watched him leave. The next evening. Eastern Palace. "Your Highness, you're finally back." When Kai Xiu saw the Crown Prince step through the door, she hurriedly went up to greet him. She hurriedly said in a small voice, "This afternoon, after the Crown Princess received a message from a mechanical bird, she has been sulking until now." Mo Lien secretly scolded her father in her heart. She had dragged him to the imperial study to discuss this and that endlessly. Look, his wife was angry. Hence, he hastily ran inside, lifted the bead bracelet and entered the inner hall. Sure enough, he saw the little stoic sitting on the bed with a fuming expression. She had pulled out a pillow and was pounding it with all her might. Mo Lien's heart shuddered nervously for no reason. Could it be that the person his wife was hammering was his true self? He didn't feel that he had offended his wife today. This morning, he only took advantage of the fact that his wife was sleeping soundly and secretly kissed her twice. He shouldn't have been discovered, so why was he beaten by his wife? When Arbor looked up, he saw Jojo's lotus hesitating as she leaned against the shelf of treasures next to the door. She dawdled and didn't come forward, and her two black, beady eyes were looking at him with an aggrieved expression. "You're back," the little fellow called out weakly. "Wife." Mo Lien hastily ran over and scooped her into his arms. He had an expression of admitting his mistake. hit me, don't hit the pillow. This husband came back late today. Hit me hard. This husband will definitely come back on time tomorrow." Arbor glanced at him speechlessly. Chapter 5172. This guy's serious expression as if he was asking to be hammered was both amusing and infuriating. Arbor looked down at the pillow on his lap. "You think it's you? What did this guy do to have such a guilty conscience? Did he think Jojo was hammering a lotus as soon as he stepped in? Could it be that he had really done something wrong? What did you do today?" "I didn't do anything." Mo Lien quickly looked at his wife magnanimously and reached out to grab her small hand, rubbing it against his chest. "Jojo, feel it if you don't believe me. Hubby's heart is beating passionately for you. I don't dare to deceive you in the slightest." Arbor's mouth twitched, and he expressionlessly pulled back his hand and pounded the pillow. "Did you know? That person ran away." Who ran away?" "Mu Qingya. Huang He used a mechanical bird to send me a message today, saying that she was rescued by someone. Snow Island has also been turned into a mess by someone. It looks like I've reached the end of my days as the island master." Mo Lien, his wife was angry at him for reaching the end of his days as the island master, but it turned out she wasn't angry at him for returning late. "Who saved Mu Qingya? Does Huang He know?" "Huang He sent a message saying that those people didn't act like normal people. They all seemed to be speed superhumans. They didn't directly clash with the island's army. Instead, they used a surprise attack to directly rescue her and then retreated." The little stoic fumed. "Although our people killed several speed superhumans, we didn't have time to conduct a large-scale search. This group of people came quickly and retreated even faster. They left after rescuing her. Didn't you already order Huang He to get rid of this woman?" Mo Lien couldn't help but be stunned when he recalled this matter. "Huang He said there was some progress on the antidote. I originally wanted to try it out on Mu Qingya again, but who knew?" Arbor clenched his fists. "But with her broken body, she probably won't live for long even if she's rescued. I just don't understand what Tianyun is after. As far as I know, Tianyun will never save a useless person. So this Mu Qingya should be useful in some way. But Huang He also said that Mu Qingya's body is strange. Several of the corpse puppets that had been used to test the medicine had already died. Mu Qingya, on the other hand, has tried several kinds of antidotes and taken no less than 100 kinds of medicines, but she's still alive. That means Mu Qingya isn't just a mutant with a special ability." Mo Lien took over Arbor's words and continued to analyze, or perhaps, this Mu Qingya has taken some high-level mutated pills from Tianyun? Could her body be reinventing itself in ways we don't know about? Arbor was shocked. He sat up straight and carefully considered Mo Lien's words. He nodded solemnly. So she might not die immediately. As long as this body doesn't collapse, maybe it can make a comeback. This is only one of our inferences, so it might not be completely correct. Mo Lien held her hand comfortingly. After all, if Tianyun can really produce this kind of medicine that can continuously refine the human body by force, it can create even more monsters that can't be killed. It's impossible for it to continue lying dormant. At this point, the two looked at each other and suddenly said, "We have to have Huang He and the others come back as soon as possible." Chapter 5173. I've already notified him. Arbor clenched her fists. She wasn't sure what this heavenly fate wanted to do next. What effect would kidnapping Wuxia have on the big picture? Or was it that Wuxia actually had a secret they didn't know about? For example, perhaps her body could be modified again. Arbor shook her head. There was no point in thinking too much now. She should summon Huang He and the others back as soon as possible. How's Mr. Su's research going at the small base in Beiwang Valley? Arbor thought of this and hesitated for a moment before saying, why don't we invite Mr. Su and the others back as well? We can discuss it with Huang He and the others and see if the two sides can piece together useful information to make progress in research. Mo Lien nodded solemnly. I was also thinking the same thing. I'll have someone inform Mr. Su and the others to set off immediately and join us here. When the time comes, let Mr. Su and Huang He discuss what to do next. Arbor nodded. We can have the people who killed the heavenly fate come back in batches. Arrange for them to be gathered at Duan Yu's place first. We'll see when the time comes. Previously, the heavenly fate's people attacked Sangzhou, so they didn't know what they would do next. Arbor hoped that they could deal with the heavenly fate again while ensuring everyone's safety. There shouldn't be much time left for them to use. The heavenly fate's recent actions all indicated that they might not be far from a large-scale outbreak. Have every city prepare for security. Arbor said expressionlessly. Pay special attention to protecting the water sources. Okay. The people of the city defense team have to patrol 24 hours a day without stopping. This is especially true for those who are transmitting messages and setting up defenses on the drum towers. Every defense point has to be under constant surveillance every minute. Prince Mo nodded repeatedly. Have His Majesty give the order to cancel all unnecessary gatherings. Arbor said coldly, have those orioles and swallows stay at home peacefully and don't cause trouble in front of me. If they have nothing to do, gather them and go dig a moat or build a wall or something. She was not a good-natured person. If she was provoked, she would not give face to anyone. If he told you to dig a canal, you had to dig it. If he told you to build a wall, you had to build it. Don't even talk about a delicate young lady. Even if the Heavenly King himself came, you had to build it when Jojo told you to. All right, my wife. I will explain everything to our father. Prince Mo smiled and nodded. He thought to himself, my wife is really awesome. She's so comprehensive in everything she considers. In this way, the workers digging the canals and building the defensive walls would definitely not run out. The rear could be replenished at any time. The next day, a protective notice was posted in the central square. The defense level of Dragon Flame City had been raised to the highest level. Entering and exiting the city gates had to be checked, and the transmission of messages had also begun to become tense. More people were assigned to guard the water source area of the entire city. A smokeless war had been quietly arranged without anyone knowing about it. On the other side, Huang He gathered a group of alchemists on the snowy island and led them to board a large ship. He turned his head and glanced at the island they had stayed on for many days. If there were no accidents, their return to Dragon Flame City this time would be the day when the battle with the Heavenly Fate Empire was imminent. Chapter 5174. If I don't live, you will die. Life and death were not in anyone's hands. Fairy, we have already followed your orders and removed all the resources on the island. Do you want to burn it? Burn it. Fairy Yellow Crane silently glanced at the snowy island, her gaze landing on a wooden plaque in front of the island. Countless lines of fire flew with the wind and landed on the snowy island, instantly igniting the entire island. Set off. Fairy Yellow Crane raised her hand and shouted. The large ship set sail and sailed into the Forgotten River 3 months later. The entire Qiao residence was filled with jubilation. All the servants were busy inside and outside for the little tiger's 100th day banquet. Arbor returned to the Chiao residence with Prince Mo yesterday, planning to stay at home for a while. Recently, her stomach was growing rapidly, and her pregnancy was becoming more obvious. Mother saw that her stomach was so big and nervously followed her around all day, worried that she would bump into something. However, she didn't have any problems. She could still walk as if she was flying, jump up and down, jump over walls, and flip tiles without any problems. She was the clearest about her own body. She checked her pulse 3 times a day, and every time, she was very healthy and normal. The key was that there was still no reaction, and she could eat and sleep. Counting the days, she reckoned that she would be able to meet baby Mo in another 3 months. Thinking of this, she felt happy for no reason. Recently, her husband was so busy that he couldn't even see the sky and earth. Day and night, he was busy dealing with the information gathered from all over the world. Many small fortifications were constantly harassed by the small forces of the Heavenly Fate Empire. Like probing, like provocation, there weren't any obvious movements, but they were always like rats in the gutter. From time to time, they would crawl out and make a bunch of noises. It was very annoying. In addition, a medium-sized matter also happened in the 3 continents recently. There was an organization called Bright Light that was rapidly rising in various large cities in the 3 continents. Especially in the capital cities of the 3 continents, they had established quite a reputation and won over the faith of many people. It was said that this organization specialized in teaching the general public how to deal with the Heavenly Fate Empire. The entire organization worshipped an omnipotent Holy Maiden. Why not? Hearing the 2 words Holy Maiden, Arbor felt like she had eaten a fly. Holy Maiden or Holy Maiden. None of them seemed to be good people. She once again thought of the saintess of the Sun Moon Temple, Nia Yaoguang. She had escaped so quickly. Ever since Du Chunjiang left, it was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. She had not been seen again. Now that he thought about it, he missed it quite a bit. Arbor thought to himself as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold arc. Bright light. Using light to illuminate the entire earth. Crown Princess, Crown Princess, Crown Princess. Kai Xiu excitedly rushed in from outside and said with a happy face, Young Master Duanmu, young Miss Qi, and the others have returned. Arbor stood up and walked out quickly. Duanmu Qin and the others had come out of seclusion a few days ago. They had all gone to the western outskirts Eastern Peak Mountain to undergo the heavenly punishment. After Duanmu Qin consumed the holy fruit, he had been absorbing the power of the holy fruit drop by drop. He had been in seclusion in the star field for so long, and he had broken through to the 8th level of God Master. His talent was indeed shocking. As for Qi Xianxian and the others, they had all stepped onto the steps of God Realm experts and rushed to the East Peak Mountain to experience the 5 spirits' reincarnation. These few days, the Dou family head, who lived near the East Peak Mountain, was scared out of his wits. The 5 spirits' reincarnation tribulation seemed to be free. It was as if it was crazy and kept descending on the East Peak Mountain. Chapter 5175. It was to the extent that after several days, half of the entire East Peak Mountain was flattened by the heavenly lightning and heavenly fire tribulation. The entire Dou family simply wanted to cry but had no tears. They really didn't expect Duanmu's cultivation realm to also jump so quickly. After eating the holy fruit, it was as if he was assisted by the gods. Arbor cursed inwardly, but her footsteps continued to quicken, and she swiftly ran out of the door. Qi Xuanxuan's group of 7 strode into the court and immediately saw the little stoic dashing toward them with a big belly. Everyone was scared out of their wits by her, and they hastily sprinted forward. They surrounded her and clamored, Jojo, why are you running? Why are you running so fast? You can't run right now. It's fine, it's fine. Arbor waved her hand and reflexively rubbed her belly. You guys don't know, but sometimes when I'm too lazy to move, baby Mo will even urge me to come out and exercise. Everyone looked at her with indescribable expressions. It's true. Arbor nodded and rubbed her belly in all seriousness. Baby Mo isn't like his dad. He's very obedient. Qi Xian couldn't help but giggle when she saw her serious expression. She pulled her small hand and said, my Qiao, it's like several years have passed since we parted. I think you've really changed a lot. You guys have been in the star domain for so long. It's been several months, right? According to the time flow 12 times faster, isn't it several years since we parted? Qi Xian quickly nodded and pulled her small hand, saying, Don't worry, we won't go anywhere after this. The little girl looked at her with a grin. We'll just wait for baby Mo to be born. I want to hug my eldest nephew as soon as possible. Okay. When Wei Ziqin entered, she happened to see a group of young men and women chatting and laughing around her precious daughter. She quickly walked up and said with a smile, Jojo, your friends. Qi Xian turned around and greeted with a smile, Hello, Auntie. Hello, Auntie. Hello. Wei Ziqin grinned from ear to ear. Since your friends are here, let's sit down together. Due to the recent ban issued by the imperial court, no one dared to go out for gatherings or meals. The various families would secretly hold a banquet in their own mansions so that their families could gather together to celebrate. The Qiao residents originally wanted to do the same. They wanted to hold a low-key 100th day banquet and celebrate with their own family members. Unfortunately, they couldn't resist the attentions of the relatives of the officials inside and outside the imperial court, as well as the wives of the aristocratic families. Many honored guests came uninvited, and the ceremonial carriages sped away like a wisp of smoke from the mansion's entrance on Changle Avenue. Even after turning a corner, there was still no end in sight. Fortunately, there were plenty of ingredients in the house, and the servants were diligent, so it wasn't like they didn't have anything to eat at the last minute. As such, the Qiao estate could only go with the flow and host a banquet to invite all the guests. Fortunately, the weather today was pretty good, so the residents set up dozens of banquet tables in the garden. The banquet wasn't very particular. The male and female guests were arranged to sit in the same garden and eat at separate tables. It was very lively. Although second Aunt Ren Shi came from a low-ranking official's family, she was very generous and appropriate in her dealings with people. She helped Wei Ziqin entertain the female guests. Madame Fong of Count Huainan's estate has arrived. Madame Ren smiled and said to Wei Ziqin, eldest sister-in-law, go and greet Madame Fong. I'll take care of things here. Wei Ziqin nodded with a smile. She went forward to welcome Madame Fong and walked to the side to exchange greetings. Chapter 5176. Fong Luiying, who was following behind the woman, spotted Arbor with her sharp eyes. She strode over and said with a chuckle, Greetings to the Crown Princess. The young Crown Princess nodded slightly and glanced at her mother and Madame Fong. She said, Madame Fong's complexion looks much better. It's all thanks to the Crown Princess's nourishing food prescription. After so many days of recuperation, my mother's illness has mostly recovered, Fong Luiying said with a smile. How's your study of basic pharmacology coming along? It's all thanks to the Crown Princess's guidance that I've more or less grasped basic pharmacology. Yesterday, my hands were itchy, so I tried to make a hemostatic pill again. I didn't expect that I would succeed on my first try this time. I even made 2 pills. She had been overjoyed at the time. When she saw the young Crown Princess today, the first thing she wanted to do was share this good news with the little stoic. The little stoic nodded expressionlessly. Since you want to walk the path of pills, you have to continuously study. Fong Luiying hummed in agreement and nodded repeatedly. I will continue to work hard. Amidst the festive and lively laughter, Saichi hurried over and leaned over to whisper something into the young Crown Princess's ear. The little stoic's unperturbed expression shifted slightly, and she asked absent-mindedly, Where is he? He's outside. Our people stopped him. Let him in, the young crown prince consort said with a cold expression. Tianyun actually sent people to deliver gifts to the Qiao estate. Since they dared to send gifts, she, Arbor, wasn't someone who didn't dare to accept them. Following the sound of bright laughter was a familiar face from Arbor. She was dressed in a bright red robe, and her hair was not tied up or tied. She was very confident and at ease as it scattered behind her back. Tianyin Star Picking Hall's Hall Master, Dugu Ling. Following him in was a row of people holding red brocade boxes of various sizes. There were about a dozen or so people, and all of them were dressed very jubilantly with red streamers tied around their heads. The guests looked at each other in dismay. At first, they couldn't figure out the situation. Little Stoic, we meet again. Dugu Ling smiled and waved his fan. He tilted his head and looked at Arbor. Long time no see. I missed you. Today is the Qiao Residence's 100th day banquet. Our young master misses you so much that he sent me here to deliver a gift. I didn't know what kind of gifts would suit your taste, so I casually picked some. I hope you like them. Just as the little crown princess was about to lose her temper. Unexpectedly, the little Stoic expressionlessly nodded and waved her hand, saying, "Put it away." Fuck, this little Stoic truly accepted anyone's gift. They looked at the handsome young man in bright red clothes in front of them. He didn't seem to have good intentions. Why didn't the little crown princess teach him a lesson? Since you gave me a gift, I won't beat you up today. Scram. The little crown princess said expressionlessly. Everyone was speechless. Dugu Ling restrained himself, and his mouth secretly twitched. Soon after, he coughed lightly and said, I have a special gift for you. Do you want to see it? Arbor's small stoic face stared coldly at him with her grape-like eyes. Tell me everything in one go. So much nonsense and so clumsy in giving gifts. It was annoying. Dugu Ling coughed and opened the lid of the box, revealing 2 bloody fingers. Everyone jumped in fright and cried out in alarm. The little stoic's eyes chilled, and in the blink of an eye, she opened the thunderclap sword and held it in her hand. Her icy voice seemed to spread out from the depths of hell. Are you seeking death? Chapter 5177. Ayayaya, don't hit me first. Take a good look at whose finger this is. Dugu Ling cried out with an aggrieved expression, this is truly a special gift, Stoic face. Take a good look. The little Stoic couldn't be bothered to look at those 2 bloody segments. She only felt that they stung her eyes. This guy dared to do this at her little nephew's 100-day banquet. If she didn't beat him to death, people would think she had a good temper. Unexpectedly, Dugu Ling took a step forward and insisted on showing her the brocade box. Quickly take a look, quickly take a look. This is the finger of your great enemy. It's true, it's true. I'm really not lying to you. Take a look. Arbor paused in his action of slashing with the thunderclap sword, and a faint, sharp glint flitted through his eyes. Mu Qingya. When she spat out these 3 words, her chilly voice fell into everyone's hearts. They intuitively felt like a string of ice beads rolling into a bead tray, crisp and clear. Her first thought was Mu Qingya when it came to her great enemy. There weren't many people in this world who could be considered her great enemy. The only one who escaped recently and fell into the Heavenly Fate Empire's clutches was this person. However, she saw Dugu Ling looking at her with a grin and an approving expression. I knew the little Stoic was the smartest person in the world. Could it be that he really guessed correctly? Arbor's gaze shifted slightly, but his small face didn't show much emotion. The young sir said that he also didn't know that the old man would send people to kidnap Hall Master Mu. In his heart, he felt very apologetic. Stoic, we didn't send people to do this. The little Stoic looked at him expressionlessly. You ran here especially to explain this matter. Even if you didn't do it, it was your Heavenly Fate Empire. You're all jackals of the same lair. When the two words, Heavenly Fate Empire, entered their ears, all of them exhaled in unison. They all looked incredulous as they glared at Dugu Ling. This red-clothed young sir was actually a person of the Heavenly Fate Empire. Currently, His Highness had already ordered a manhunt for people of the Heavenly Fate Empire in the entire Dragon Flame City. Who would have thought that this young master's guts would be so bold? As a person of the Heavenly Fate realm, instead of hiding at home, he actually dared to appear at the Qiao Estate's 100-day banquet. He even bowed so much to the Crown Princess. Everyone couldn't help but look at the young Crown Prince Consort in puzzlement. They all secretly thought, the Crown Prince Consort and this young master of Tianyun seem to be very familiar with each other. Could it be that they are acquaintances, or even friends? Everyone stole a glance at the young Crown Princess. Seeing her cold expression, they did not dare to make any wild guesses. As for everyone's suspicions and guesses at the banquet, it had absolutely nothing to do with the little stoic. What other people thought had nothing to do with her, and she was never someone who cared about how others looked at her. However, what annoyed her the most was Dugu Ling's real intention for coming here to deliver 2 bloody fingers. You can't just barge in, you can't barge in. Outside the courtyard, several servants' shouts could be heard, accompanied by the sound of hurried footsteps. Stop! The royal guard standing guard around the Qiao estate promptly appeared at the courtyard's entrance and blocked the group of people who were hurrying over. How dare you block our holy maiden's path? Go away! Following that shout, the 2 guards of the Qiao estate were sent flying through the air with a slap, crashing straight towards the banquet. All the guests couldn't help but gasp in surprise. Chapter 5178. Just as the 2 men were about to crash onto the banquet table, 2 black figures suddenly appeared and swiftly grabbed the legs of the 2 guards. Both of them jumped back and steadied the 2 guards. Only then did everyone let out a collective sigh of relief. The 2 guards were a little frightened. Even though they had steadied themselves, their faces couldn't help but turn pale. Ah, someone's here to cause trouble. Dugu Ling hurriedly moved to the side and patted his chest, pretending to be frightened. The little crown princess turned to look at the arched entrance of the court with a frosty expression. She saw a group of people crowding around a white-clothed woman, weapons in their hands. All the guests hurriedly stood up and gathered towards the center. Everyone looked at these uninvited guests with an indescribable panic. The atmosphere was suddenly filled with a tinge of tension. Both sides silently raised their guard. Jojo. Second Aunt Ren hurriedly pulled on her sleeve and looked at the intruders with surprise. Who are you people? Why have you barged into our Qiao estate? Qiao Zhongbang and second Uncle Qiao also asked with a cold expression, who are you? State your name. This is our holy maiden of Zhaoguang. A woman in a green dress with a cold expression strode to the front of the group and coldly glanced at everyone. She raised her chin high and spoke slowly, the holy maiden is here. Why hasn't anyone come forward to greet her? Everyone looked at each other, their eyes revealing an expression of looking at an idiot. They had naturally heard of Zhaoguang, an organization that had been developing very well in the past 2 months. However, in the eyes of the madams and misses of the aristocratic families, such a non-governmental organization was nothing more than a small sect for the commoners to play around with. Naturally, they wouldn't put them in their eyes. But they didn't expect that Zhaoguang would take themselves so seriously. Not only did they barge into the Qiao estate's 100-day banquet, they even asked these madams and misses to greet them. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? Arbor patted second Aunt Ren's hand to appease her. He retracted his hand and waved it casually. He didn't want to say anything more to these people from Zhaoguang. In an instant, 7 or 8 shadow guards, including the 2 men in black who had appeared earlier, emerged from the crowd at the same time. Without saying a word, they stepped forward to chase the holy maiden of Zhaoguang and the others away. The woman in the green dress was immediately angered. Her eyes were wide open in anger as she raised her hand to block one of the secret guards. Don't act recklessly. This is our holy maiden of bright light. You guys, all of you. Let go, let go, let go. What do you want? Seeing that Arbor had sent a group of secret guards to chase them away without saying anything, the Saintess of Light and the others were obviously angry. Everyone, please don't be in such a hurry to chase him away. Dressed in a white dress, the Saintess of Light spoke up. Her long hair was tied behind her back, and her hands were crossed in front of her lower abdomen. Her posture was dignified and demure. Under a set of red pomegranate gemstone headwear, her skin was fair, her cheeks were delicate, and half of her face was covered with a white veil. She indeed looked holy and radiant, and she had a pure and clean appearance. But what kind of person was Arbor? At a glance, she felt that this woman was a bit like Nye Yaoguang. Unfortunately, Nye Yaoguang's figure was even more graceful and ethereal than this woman in front of her. She was also slightly taller. I wonder which one of you is the crown princess. This humble girl greets you. The Saintess of Light nodded slightly, and her expression didn't seem very respectful. Chapter 5179. Impudent. Kai Xiu coldly reprimanded, Who do you think you are? Crown princess, is she someone you can meet whenever you want? Arbor slightly waved her hand, expressionlessly letting the two maids withdraw. The two of them were separated by a few empty tables, coldly looking at each other. Arbor clearly saw a trace of disdain in this holy maiden's eyes. Ah, she really has guts. Arbor secretly thought, last time, the person who showed this kind of look to her, I wonder if their bones have turned cold. She did not expect that today, there would be someone who dared to show this kind of look to her in public. Indeed, the ignorant are fearless. Holy Maiden heard that a person of Tian Yun appeared in the Qiao residence, so she specially came to eradicate evil. Unexpectedly, when she saw it with her own eyes, she was really shocked. The green-robed woman loudly said to the crowd. At this time, Holy Maiden Zhao Guan also calmly said, Everyone says that the Crown Princess and Tian Yun are irreconcilable. But I did not expect that on the day of Crown Princess's nephew's 100th day banquet, Tian Yun would send the star-picking Hall's Hall Master to deliver such a big gift. Right and wrong, black and white, all lies in the human heart. Everyone has seen it with their own eyes. Whether the Crown Princess is black or white, it is clear at a glance. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. What the hell, what does this Holy Maiden Zhao Guang mean? Was it to accuse the Crown Princess of colluding with someone from the Heavenly Fate Circle? She really has guts. Didn't she see that the ladies and ladies of the aristocratic families were all smiling at the young Crown Princess with a respectful expression? After several small banquets, who knows what the Crown Princess's temperament is like? If you don't provoke her, with her cold temperament, she will not think of making things difficult for you. If you insist on provoking her, perhaps blood will be spilled on the spot. Clearly, today's banquet was going well at the beginning, but now it seems that there will be an unforeseen event. Everyone silently retreated a few steps, and could not help but look at Holy Maiden Zhao Guang and her entourage as if they were looking at a fool. Could it be that these people had been living a good life for too long and wanted to stay in jail for a while? Or were they here to provoke the Crown Princess? What was he after? Could it be that he wanted to make a name for the entire organization by provoking the little Crown Princess? Just how muddle-headed was their little lousy organization, rushing to court disaster in front of the little stoic Crown Princess? Based on everyone's understanding of the Crown Princess, they were afraid that this matter would not end peacefully. After the Holy Maiden of Light finished her impassioned speech, she realized that none of the hundreds of people present paid any attention to her. Everyone retreated a little further, very kindly leaving an open space in the middle for the people of the Radiant Organization. Let Zhao Guang perform and let it continue to court death. As the audience, they just watched silently. Once they received the order from the little Crown Princess, they could escape at any time and not watch this liveliness of life and death. It wasn't something that could be casually watched. Now that you're watching the liveliness in the Qiao estate, the grass at your grave will probably grow tall next year. Arbor held her sword in one hand and lightly swiped it with her right hand, instantly covering the sword with a layer of sizzling electric current. She pointed her long sword at Zhao Guang and coldly enunciated each word. Today, if you can't defeat me, you will certainly die a violent death. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as they retreated a few steps out of fear. Defeat me or die, choose. Arbor said coldly. The thunderclap sword emitted a light screeching sound as if it sensed something. Chapter 5180. As the Holy Maiden's closest maidservant, the woman in the green dress was clearly already completely dumbstruck. No. Was there something wrong with this crown princess's brain? If a normal person was exposed to be involved with a public enemy, the evil sect, they would definitely give a proper explanation. Who knew this person actually didn't explain at all? Not only that, but she even openly provoked the Holy Maiden and spoke such harsh words to their Holy Maiden. Was this the reaction a normal person should have? Wasn't she living too recklessly? Didn't she completely disregard what everyone present was thinking? You. The Holy Maiden didn't seem to expect the little crown princess to have such an odd reaction. After being dumbfounded for several seconds, she reflexively took a step back. She gazed at this stoic-faced crown princess warily. What do you want? Didn't I already give you a choice? Shut up. Arbor kicked out a sandalwood stool in front of her, which directly crashed into the Holy Maiden's face. The Holy Maiden jumped in fright and hastily turned around to dodge. But the instant she turned around, she froze on the spot. There was no other reason other than the little stoic crown princess, who was standing behind her and kicking the stool away, actually appeared in front of her now. She was still standing behind her just now. The Holy Maiden hastily looked back and saw that the little crown princess had long disappeared from her original position. Teleportation, this crown princess could actually teleport. The Holy Maiden was alarmed. The two were so close that she reflexively shrunk back in fright. However, she had just shrunk back a step when that crown princess spread her fingers and pinched her neck. From the looks of it, he was going to break her neck. Don't mess around. The Holy Maiden shrieked and hastily covered herself with a defensive barrier. The little crown princess's fingers abruptly passed through her defensive barrier. Everyone saw it clearly. The crown princess's 5 slender fingers really did pass through the Holy Maiden's defensive barrier. Just as her 5 fingers were about to grab the other party's throat, she saw a strong force coming from behind. Zhao Guang was involuntarily pulled back by a fierce force and fell to the ground with a loud bang. He rolled back several times before barely stabilizing his body. Arbor turned around and saw a middle-aged woman with a cold expression standing in front of him. She had her arms crossed and was looking at him coldly. Aunt Fei, are you crazy? How can you treat our saintess like this? The woman in the green dress couldn't help but scream. She rushed forward and helped the saintess up. Zhao Guang was dragged back by the middle-aged woman, and his body fell heavily to the ground. Just now, she had hit her waist. Now, with the help of her personal maidservant, Han Su, she stood up. Her entire face was distorted from the pain. Fei Gu said coldly, if I didn't do anything, the saintess would already be a dead person. Supper. Xiaoye is here. Kill them all. Kill them all, Arbor said coldly. Everyone felt as if their hearts were being hammered by a huge hammer. They couldn't help but shrink their necks. Oh my God, this is the result of provoking the little crown princess. The little crown princess was the kind of person who could go berserk at any time. They couldn't afford to provoke her. Crown princess, please wait a moment. The middle-aged woman, Aunt Fei, hurriedly said. You people of the Holy Maiden are in charge of everything. How dare you meddle with our crown princess? You can't blame anyone for your own death. Chapter 5181. Aunt Fei got into a defensive stance, and a spiritual aura appeared in her hand as she shouted, "Crown Princess, please think carefully. This is your nephew's 100-day banquet. Could it be that you want to spill your blood over the 100-day banquet?" The young Crown Princess paused for a moment. She turned her gaze and saw the round, chubby, and adorable little fellow in Xiao Yao's arms. The recklessly flashing lightning on the thunder crash sword slowly subsided. Arbor stared coldly at the radiant saint and the others. "I'll give you 1 minute to pack up and get out of my house immediately. In the future, if I see you swindling people on the streets again, don't blame my sword for being merciless. We're here to look for Tianyun." Before the radiant saint could finish speaking, Aunt Fei covered her mouth. The latter cupped her hands towards the young Crown Princess with a serious expression. "Crown Princess, please forgive us. Radiant Saint has no intention of opposing the Crown Princess. Our standpoint is actually the same as yours." The young Crown Princess sneered. "The debts between Tianyun and I are still vivid in our minds. We will ask them to pay us back one by one. As for you, it has nothing to do with me in the first place. It's best if we don't interact with each other. If any of you insist on provoking me, I will let you know how red tomorrow's flowers will be. How beautiful tomorrow's sunset will be. Why aren't you scramming?" The young Crown Princess coldly shouted with a stoic expression. Aunt Fei took a deep breath and nodded slightly. Just as she was about to drag the radiant saint away, she suddenly heard a strange roar from behind. They all turned their heads to look, only to see a rotten face suddenly appear behind them. The guests who saw the corpse puppet's rotting face screamed in unison and retreated in panic. Although they were still very far away from the corpse puppet at the arched door, the corpse puppet's face really gave everyone a fright. Suddenly seeing such a thing, no one would be in a good mood. Especially when that thing actually pounced forward and wrapped itself around a member of the Radiant Light. The bright light female disciple screamed in fright, her face almost sticking to the corpse puppet. The madams and young misses almost fainted when they saw this scene. Putting themselves in their shoes, if it was their true body that was in close contact with this corpse puppet, they would be scared to death. He could not help but sympathize with that female disciple of the Bright Light School. This woman looked to be in her early 20s, yet she was bitten by a corpse puppet. Her life was over. How pitiful. "Quick, pull this thing away, quick," Saintess Zhao Guang said angrily with a cold face. More than 10 male and female disciples of the Radiant Light sect took out unique iron hooks from their inner worlds and threw them out in unison, hooking the corpse puppet from all directions. The iron hook pierced through the skeleton's limbs and firmly hooked onto it. Because the corpse puppet's 2 arms were hooked by several iron hooks, it finally let go of the woman it was gnawing on. "Oh my God, it's already gnawed beyond recognition," a madam from an aristocratic family blurted out. Everyone looked over and saw that the Radiant Light female disciple who was being gnawed on by the corpse puppet just now was lying on the ground on the verge of death. Her nose seemed to be gasping for air. It looked like she was about to die. Chapter 5182. From beginning to end, the young Crown Princess merely watched this scene with a detached eye. Now that he saw the female disciple lying on the ground with her mouth slightly open, as if she was having difficulty breathing, he only glanced at her coldly. "Heavenly Fortune, it's the Heavenly Fortune Hall's people who brought the zombies here." A Radiant Light disciple unsheathed the sword at his waist and pointed it at the innocent-looking red-clothed man, yelling sternly, "Kill him, kill this Heavenly Fortune Hall's head. It's him, it's this scourge who's harming people." Dugu Ling impatiently glanced at the young Crown Princess and said with an aggrieved expression, "Poker face, I really didn't bring her here. I swear, I purely came here today to deliver a gift. If I brought this ugly thing here, I'll immediately suffer heavenly punishment of being struck by lightning." Du Ling raised 3 fingers above his head and swore with conviction and conviction. Arbor coldly glanced at him, then shifted his gaze to that female disciple. Come, seize them all. This princess has changed her mind. These people repeatedly came to her residence to cause trouble. If she didn't deal with them on the streets, then anyone could come to her Qiao estate to cause trouble in the future. There really wasn't the slightest bit of discipline. Furthermore, their acting was so fake and lousy that she really didn't have any interest in continuing to watch. If you wanted her to explain things to others, it would take a lot of effort. She didn't even want to think about it. She simply didn't waste words with you when she gave orders. What do you want to do? The radiant light holy maiden couldn't help but panic, and she vigilantly stared at Xiao Ye's entourage, who were approaching step by step. Don't mess around, I'm warning you. Crown Princess, as expected, you colluded with the Heavenly Fortune Hall long ago. The radiant light holy maiden said angrily, otherwise, why would the Heavenly Fortune Star Picking Hall's Hall Master come to the Qiao estate to deliver gifts for no reason? Tell us, you should give everyone an explanation. I see that you two have a good relationship. Don't tell me that you two are close friends. The Holy Maiden of Light asked harshly. Her eyes under the veil looked very righteous. Aunt Fei frowned. Just as she was about to say something, the green-dressed maidservant Han Su rushed forward and shouted, Saintess, please take out the holy fruit and save our suffering sisters. As soon as she finished speaking, the surrounding bright light disciples all knelt down, throwing their iron hooks on the ground and throwing their weapons aside. They formed a circle and kowtowed to the bright light holy maiden. Holy maiden, please save our suffering brothers and sisters. Saintess, please save us. Saintess, please save us. The guests looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. Logically speaking, the female disciple of the Radiant sect who was lying on the ground had been bitten to this extent by the zombie. Why were these people kneeling on the ground and praying to their holy maiden to save her? Everyone knew that after being bitten by a zombie, there was a 10% chance that they would turn into a monster. There was no way to save them. If there really was a medicine in this world that could save people bitten by a zombie, then this monster wouldn't seem so scary. However, they saw their saintess looking at them with a compassionate expression. She sighed and said, My pitiful brothers and sisters of bright light, you have devoted yourselves to the cause of exterminating corpse puppets and saving the world. As the Radiant sect's holy maiden, I will not let my brothers and sisters bleed in vain and die in vain. As long as there is a glimmer of hope to save you, I am willing to do anything. Chapter 5183. The Saintess is gracious, the Saintess is gracious. The surrounding fools were kneeling and kowtowing, creating a ruckus at the Qiao estate's entrance. The cold smile on Arbor's face tightened even more. When Prince Mo entered, he initially thought that he had entered the wrong door. He didn't know what these demons and ghosts at the entrance were singing, but they completely blocked his words of, Wife, this husband has returned late. Wife, what's going on, what's going on? Prince Mo stepped through the door, his gaze coldly sweeping over the faces of all the guests. When everyone saw that this crown prince had arrived, they hurriedly knelt and kowtowed, calling out, Your Highness, and, Crown Prince. There was even a very quick-witted official who very nimbly explained, Your Highness, none of us here caused any trouble. These people at the entrance were brought here by Zhaoguang, and that female immortal who is being kowtowed to is the Saintess of Zhaoguang, Yuan Maui. What a joke, if the great crown prince remembered them, how could they have any good days in the future? They had to explain the situation clearly. They had completely obediently come to the banquet to present gifts and absolutely didn't have any other intentions, nor did they dare to have any other intentions. If this Saintess of Zhaoguang hadn't barged in with people, the banquet would still be fine. Yes, yes, Your Highness the Crown Prince is wise. It was indeed the Saintess of Zhaoguang's sudden arrival that caused such a mess at the entrance. Wife. Prince Mo hurriedly grasped his wife's small hand. When he saw his wife's expression, his handsome face immediately stiffened, and he angrily questioned, "Who made the crown princess angry?" His wife's stoic face puffed up in anger. Who actually dared to make his wife angry on the day of the 100-day banquet? They were simply tired of living. Without waiting for Kai Xiu to speak, the fastest aristocratic madam on the side hastily explained, "Reporting to Your Highness the Crown Prince, this really isn't a matter of us guests causing trouble. Originally, we were all properly celebrating the birthday of the Qiao Estate's little young master. Who knew that Tianyun would actually send some hall master to congratulate us? Then the holy maiden of Zhaoguang brought people in and accused the crown princess of having a close relationship with the hall master of the Heavenly Fate Hall. She must be involved with the Heavenly Fate Hall." This madam was very eloquent. In just a few sentences, she had recounted the whole story, and all the guests present nodded their heads. Yes, it really has nothing to do with us. Your Highness, it's him. It's them. They made the crown princess so angry that she couldn't speak. This is really devoid of conscience. The guests cursed at the same time. Not only did these people cause trouble at the Qiao Estate's young master's 100-day celebration, they even gave 2 bloody fingers to the crown princess. Not only that, he even gave a corpse puppet to the Qiao Estate's young master. That's insane. The crown prince grew angrier as he listened, and smoke seemed to be coming out of his head. "You Ba, capture these people for us. This crown prince wants these people to know one thing. Anyone who comes to the Qiao Estate to cause trouble must die." They really had nothing better to do, coming to his wife's family to cause trouble. His wife was already suffering so much. She was pregnant, yet she still had to be tormented by these bastards. They deserved to die. Wait. The holy maiden of Zhaoguang couldn't help but cry out. What was going on? Why did the divine province's crown prince suddenly return? Chapter 5184. Didn't they come to an agreement that they would find someone to delay the crown prince so that he wouldn't be able to return in a short period of time? They had to try their best to finish this show in the shortest amount of time possible. But what was going on now? How could they continue with this show? The crown prince had already appeared, so how could they continue with this show? The Saintess of Bright Light was anxious and resentful. She quickly shook off the hand of one of the hidden guards and continued, "No matter what, Your Highness, please let us save people first. The show had to go on, and it had to go on. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for them to come here today. Us sisters are in danger. We have to save them immediately." These freaking guests were all freaks. They clearly knew what the truth was, and they had personally witnessed the close relationship between the crown princess and the head of the Tianyun Hall. But now, in front of the crown prince, they only knew how to push the bright light out as a scapegoat. They didn't talk about anything else, but said that the bright light had angered the crown princess, so they hurriedly tried to distance themselves from the bright light. Could these people be any more shameless? The Saintess of Bright Light clenched her teeth. She didn't expect that these people from the aristocratic families and the officials were all the same. They didn't dare to go against the little crown princess, so they pushed the bright light out as scapegoats. Shameless to the extreme. Take them away. Amo Lien waved his hand impatiently, and more hidden guards bounced out from the four-sided horned canopy, forcibly expelling the Radiant Light Group's group of people. The Saintess of Bright Light and the others struggled and shouted, "What are you trying to do? Are you not even giving us a chance to save people? Let go, bastards. Don't use your status and power to bully good people like us." Ah! The group was beaten to the ground by the Dark Court guards led by Hades Ba, and they struggled with all their might. As the two sides were in a stalemate, the Saintess of Bright Light struggled to climb out of the crowd. She rushed to the side of the Bright Light female disciple who was lying on the ground on the verge of death. She lifted her head with one trembling hand, her face full of tears. Just as a secret guard rushed up, the Saintess of Light suddenly raised her hand and revealed a small white jade porcelain bottle in front of everyone. She shouted, "I have a way to save this sister who was bitten by the zombie. I really need a way." Arbor stared coldly at the woman in front of him with a gloomy expression. Saintess Xiaoguang also knew that her acting was quite stiff. According to reason, if these shadow guards hadn't come up to disturb the situation, it should have been the various disciples of Zhao Guang crying bitterly and begging her to save this sister. Then, she thought about it again and again. Considering the big picture, she reluctantly took out the porcelain bottle to save him. But now, after being beaten up by these people, she had no choice but to jump to the last step. She raised the porcelain bottle in her hand and shouted. Everyone's gaze was naturally focused on the porcelain bottle in her hand. The Saintess of Bright Light took a deep breath and poured out a pure green crystal fruit from the bottle. She held it in her hand and showed it to everyone. This is the one and only holy fruit in the world. It's the spirit of all trees, the holy tree. The fruit that it bears. It can cure all poisons in the world, including zombie poison. Following the Saintess of Radiant Light's every word, Xiao Mu's eyes instantly turned into two icy, deep pools. Chapter 5185. This holy maiden of Zhaoguang actually said that her porcelain bottle contained holy fruit. She really couldn't help but ask her a thing or two. If the holy tree of all wood was in the hands of this holy maiden of light, then what was Qiuqiu in her star domain? If the holy maiden of light was the one who controlled the holy wood, then what was the origin of the holy wood that Sir Jojo comprehended? What a joke! This holy maiden of light actually came to her and said that she had a holy fruit. The green fruit that she took out was indeed somewhat similar to the holy fruit that Qiuqiu gave her. However, the fruit that Qiuqiu gave her was furry and emerald green. The one that the holy maiden of light took out was as smooth as a mirror. Although it was green, it didn't give off the feeling that it was full of vitality. Arbor stared coldly at the holy maiden of light, who was kneeling on one knee on the ground. Her eyes seemed to freeze with ice. At this moment, everyone on the scene had a very surprised expression on their faces as they whispered to each other. Arbor vaguely heard some people say, "I've heard from a madam that this holy maiden of light has comprehended the power of the holy wood of the 5 spirit origins. She's very capable." Yes, I heard that she can summon the holy wood and use the vitality of the holy wood's origin to revive the dead. As long as someone swallows a holy fruit, no matter how sick they are, they can immediately come back to life. Is that so? Aya, that's really too amazing. If that's the case, even the king of hell won't be able to snatch someone from the holy maiden. If that's the case, then isn't she more powerful than a pill master? Isn't that so? Just as everyone was whispering, a burst of joyous laughter suddenly erupted beside the holy maiden of light. He's alive! He's alive! He's alive! Thank God! Our sister has finally come back to life. The disciples of the Holy Maiden of Light knelt down again as if they were worshipping a miracle. They prostrated themselves on the ground and muttered, "The Holy Maiden's great kindness will never be forgotten. Saintess, I will never forget your kindness." Arbor looked on coldly from the side, watching these people cry and laugh as they put on such a show. There was not the slightest extra expression on his face. Jojo. Wei Ziqin had a perplexed look on her face as she walked to her side and asked in a low voice, What are they doing?" "Oh, it's just an act. Mother, just take it as a joke." Wei Ziqin couldn't help but stare blankly. "But why are they acting in front of our Qiao estate?" This was exactly what Arbor wanted to know. However, looking at the scene in front of her, she thought that she could guess a thing or two. Today, her little nephew was holding a 100th day banquet, and those who had come to the Qiao estate were all famous officials, nobles, and prominent families in the city. With Xiaoguang doing such a thing at their doorstep, it was bound to raise the reputation of the entire organization. He wanted to use their family as a stepping stone to climb up the social ladder. It was a good idea, but unfortunately it also depended on whether the little crown princess would give them face. What are you still standing there for? What's there to see in such a fake show? Mo Lien said impatiently. Aren't you going to take them all down? Hearing this, Yuba and the rest did not hesitate. They hurriedly pounced forward and started punching and kicking. They did not care if they caught the people of Zhaoguang. No matter if they were men or women, they would beat them up first. The Holy Maiden of Light and the rest were all stunned. Especially this Holy Maiden. She really did not expect to be treated like this. Chapter 5186. She had already put in so much effort to put on such an act, so how could this crown prince still be so unreasonable? Didn't he see that the holy fruit she took out saved a female disciple on the brink of death in front of everyone's eyes? Didn't he know what this meant? This meant that she, the Saintess of Bright Light, could revive the dead and resolve the series of disasters that Tianyun had created. She could save those normal people who had been infected by corpse poison. As long as she wanted, as long as she was willing, that entire bright light could save even more people from the abyss of suffering in the future. As the crown prince of the divine province, how could he be so short-sighted? Just because of that little crown princess, he could disregard the country's important matters. How could he be so selfish and let down the trust of the divine province's citizens and his ancestors? When the Saintess of Bright Light thought of this, she suddenly felt a pain in her head. Someone had actually pressed her head down and slapped her into kneeling on the ground. You, what are you doing? The Saintess flew into a rage, and her body couldn't help but twist back and forth in their hands. You! Ah! Stop, stop slapping, stop slapping. How could the Saintess of Bright Light be a match for the Yu court guards after her head was slapped several times in succession? Together with Aunt Fei and the rest, they were all subdued by the hidden guards on the spot and forced to kneel on the ground in 2 obedient rows. Speak. Arbor spoke faintly as he stared at the Saintess of Bright Light kneeling at the very front and asked, "Where did you place the holy wood fragment?" This Saintess of Bright Light was truly quite an interesting person. She came to the door herself and allowed the sapling Chiochio to sense a bit of the power of the holy wood in her body. Indeed, the Saintess of Bright Light didn't lie. She had indeed used the power of the spirit of the holy wood. Unfortunately, it wasn't as she had boasted, that she had comprehended the power of the wood spirit's origin on her own. Just like how the Holy Water sect had borrowed the power of the holy water back then, this Saintess was also the same. Borrowing and comprehending on one's own were definitely completely different. Chiochio told her through divine sense that the holy wood fragment was not with the Saintess of Light at the moment. Its aura was faintly discernible, so it should have been hidden by the scheming Saintess. I don't understand what you're talking about. Saintess Zhao Guang's heart trembled slightly. She opened her mouth and said this. Arbor didn't waste any more words with her and shot a look at Yuba. The latter nodded and lifted the Bright Light Holy Maiden up. He called out to his brothers of the Nether Court guards to take down the men and women of the Bright Light Holy Maiden and drag them out of the door. From the looks of it, there was an 80% chance that everyone here was going to be imprisoned. Only then did those people from Zhaoguang shout out in panic, Don't. Your Highness, Crown Princess. We are Zhaoguang's people, no, not Tianyun's. That's right, Your Highness the Crown Prince, we are the sects that are fighting against the heavenly fate together with the people of the divine land. You can't do this to us. There are only so many of us for our holy fruit. You can't arrest us, you can't drag us into prison. That's right. We are the Saintess. Io. The noise was quickly silenced by a few kicks from the underworld court guards. The hidden guards didn't care whether they were making a fuss or not. After all, they had received His Highness the Crown Prince's orders and only cared about dragging them out. Qiuqiu's last fragment is related to this woman. She can't die for now. Chapter 5187. Moreover, the origins of this woman and her organization were quite suspicious. They had to be thoroughly investigated. When Xiao Mu turned around to look, she saw that Dugu Ling had left at some unknown time. He had left quietly and soundlessly and had long since disappeared without a trace. She couldn't help but frown. People from Tianyun and Zhaoguang had entered her Qiao estate's gates at the right time. Could it be that there really wasn't any connection? She couldn't help but suspect this. Tianyun and Zhaoguang, did they have some kind of connection? Wife, don't get angry with idle people. The crown prince held her hand and consoled her in a low voice. These people aren't worth getting angry with, understand? Arbor nodded and looked up at him. Didn't you send a message back earlier saying that you had some matters to attend to and might not be able to make it back in time? I wanted to come back earlier to accompany you. Crown Prince Mo smiled as he paused while holding her small hand. Speaking of today's matter, it is a bit fishy. I was held back by some matters, and this group of people barged into our home. I feel that there might be some connection between the two. Arbor knew that her husband was especially sensitive when it came to matters. Since he said so, then there really was a problem. You mean to say that the people who caused trouble for you might be from Zhaoguang? Perhaps they wanted to use some trivial matters to hold you back, so that you wouldn't be able to make it back in time. Wife, this is telepathy, isn't it? I thought that my wife might need me, so I hurriedly finished the matters at hand and came back. Prince Mo lowered his head and winked at Arbor. As expected, many people with bad intentions have come to our home again. Mo Lien tugged Arbor's small hand. Jojo, don't worry. Hubby is here for everything. They won't be able to bully our family. Arbor grunted and nodded. Right now, I want to figure out what's going on with this holy maiden of Zhaoguang. She has the aura of a seed fragment. According to Qiuqiu, this should be the last fragment. Once Qiuqiu collected all the fragments, its holy wood spirit would be completely recovered. In other words, it would be a piece of cake for it to produce holy fruits in the future. Mo Lien nodded. Then we still have to ask that saintess. The banquet became lively again. Although everyone was toasting each other and eating and drinking with smiles on their faces, Xiao Mu could tell that these people were more or less contemplative. It was probably because the holy fruit just now was too shocking. At this moment, everyone was still immersed in their own thoughts. His Highness the Crown Prince had captured the holy maiden of Zhaoguang. Then the people in their organization would not let this matter rest. After all, she could save thousands of saintesses of radiance who were poisoned by the corpse poison. On Changle North Street, in a very inconspicuous courtyard. In the depths of a dark and narrow path, there was a small, dark, and cramped woodshed. The mournful sound came from there. Anyone who heard it couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. Mu Xiaoxue clenched her hands tightly as she followed behind her father, Mu Jinghong. She didn't dare to look at the gloomy and dark surroundings. Ever since she returned to the City of Shadows, the city lord's wife, Shui Yan, hadn't let her have a good day. Chapter 5188. Mu Xiaoxue was worried about her mother. She didn't eat or sleep well in the City of Shadows. Now that she heard that her father Mu Jinghong knew about her mother's whereabouts, she begged Mu Jinghong to bring her along. Accompanying her were her two senior brothers Zhao Yi and Gui Xuan. Although she had her senior brothers to take care of her in the City of Shadows, these men weren't of much use. In front of the city lord's wife, Shui Yan, they could only be obedient. They weren't Shui Yan's match at all. Speaking of Shui Yan, Mu Xiaoxue was really angry. She relied on her status as the city lord's wife and was in charge of the City of Shadows to bully her from time to time. Not only did she embezzle her food and clothing expenses, she even took some cultivation resources. Thinking of this, Mu Xiaoxue couldn't help but grit her teeth. Immediately, the image of the city lord's wife's vicious expression and her arrogant voice appeared in front of her. Since Miss Xiaoxue is a cripple, it means that there is no use in giving her these cultivation resources. It's better to give her cultivation resources to the other disciples with good aptitudes. So what if she was a normal person and a cripple? A cripple couldn't have her own cultivation resources and couldn't try to awaken her meridians. Yes, her age didn't meet the criteria for awakening her meridians, but there was still an inextinguishable flame hidden in her heart. She wanted to embark on the path of cultivation. She also hoped that she could be like Mu Feixiao. Even if her cultivation was average, she would at least be a low-level spirit master with an inner world. That would be enough, all right? As long as she could become a low-level spirit master, even if it was only level 1, as long as she could comprehend any of the 5 spirit energies between heaven and earth, even if it was only the 4th or 5th level of water spirit or wood spirit, it would still be much better than nothing. She really didn't have high expectations for herself. She really didn't have high expectations. However, even so, the heavens weren't willing to give her such a small hope. Every time the city lord's wife said the word cripple, it was like holding a sharp dagger and firmly stabbing into her heart. Her heart was already riddled with holes and there was no way to reverse it. Creak. As the door of the woodshed was pushed open by Mu Jinghong with one hand, a terrifying and stifled cry of pain came from inside. That cry was like the roar of a suppressed beast. When it fell into Mu Xiaoxue's ears, she couldn't help but take 2 steps back, her hair standing on end. Shwapper. Gu Yishuan's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He hurriedly supported his beloved junior sister and looked at her tenderly. Junior sister, watch your step. Zhao Yi frowned and brushed Gu Yishuan's hand away. He then took Mu Xiaoxue's hand and helped her walk inside. He reminded her in a low voice, Junior sister, this place is dark and damp. Be careful not to step on nails. Looking at Zhao Yi's attitude, Gu Yishuan could not help but feel a knot in his heart. It was true that he had only joined the City of Shadows not long ago, but his sincerity toward his junior sister was no less than anyone else's. This senior brother Zhao Yi, it was fine if he always found fault with him, but in front of a beauty, he always wanted to compete with him. It was simply hateful. Zhao Yi supported Mu Xiaoxue and stepped into the cramped and dark woodshed. He glanced at the person behind him and deliberately stretched out his leg to kick Gu Yishuan. Chapter 5189. This kick caused Gu Yishuan to stumble slightly, delaying the two by half a step. Gu Yishuan was so angry that smoke came out of his head. He could only watch helplessly as Zhao Yi led his junior sister into the woodshed. A trace of resentment emerged in his heart. The seed of resentment was buried in his heart. He only needed to stimulate it a little every day and it would grow as if it had taken root and sprouted. Damn Zhao Yi! Gu Yishuan gritted his teeth and followed in. Because his steps were too big, he kicked the door frame, making a bang sound. Mu Jinghong frowned and turned to look. He said coldly to Gu Yishuan, "Be careful." "Yes, master." Gu Yishuan was shocked. He hurriedly bowed and did not dare to show the slightest anger on his face. Mu Jinghong was too lazy to care about his disciples. This Gu Yishuan, if it were not for his daughter Mu Xiaoxue asking him to accept him as a disciple, with his ordinary aptitude, he would not be qualified to enter the City of Shadows. It was only because of the power of the Gu family behind Gu Yishuan. Although the Gu family was not a first-class aristocratic family, it could still be ranked as a second-class aristocratic family. It seemed that there were some redeeming qualities. Mu Jinghong's footsteps suddenly stopped. From his angle, he could see a thin and shriveled figure curled up in the corner. His whole body was pressed against the firewood like a thin piece of paper. He looked like he had experienced the vicissitudes of life and had a pitiful look. Qingya. Mu Jinghong's voice was trembling with fear. He did not expect that in just a short period of time, Qingya would be tortured to such an extent that she did not look human. These people were really abominable. Mu Jinghong's eyes were wide open as he walked forward quickly. Mu Qingya, who was curled up beside the pile of firewood, could not help but twitch slightly. Her whole body shrank behind the pile of firewood. This kind of feeling of resistance and rejection was very obvious. Qingya. Mu Jinghong did not care about how dirty she was. He strode forward and pulled this weak woman into his arms. At this time, he saw Mu Qingya's bony face clearly. Mu Jinghong's heart was filled with grief and indignation. He could not help but cry. Qingya, how have they treated you during this period of time? How could a dignified and elegant woman be tortured to such a state? She had fallen into Arbor's hands. That evil woman from Arbor had actually sent people to make his Qingya look like this. Mother, mother. Mu Xiaoxue was also scared out of her wits by her mother's current appearance. She screamed twice and knelt down in front of her mother. Mu Qingya's dim eyes suddenly lit up. She reached out her bony hand and groped in front of her as if she wanted to grab Mu Xiaoxue's hand. However, when Mu Xiaoxue saw her mother's dark, bone-like claws, she hesitated and subconsciously shrank back. Although her movements were very fast, Mu Qingya could still see her daughter's movements clearly even though her vision was blurry. Her retraction of her hand was like a heavy punch to Mu Qingya's heart. Mu Qingya's heart twitched. The sound that came out of her mouth was as if she had been run over by a wheel. She called out Xiaoxue in a deep voice and raised her trembling hand again. Chapter 5190. This time, Mu Xiaoxue braced herself and reached out her hands. After all, under the strict gaze of her father, Mu Jinghong, if she retracted her hands again, it would definitely cause her father's dissatisfaction. Right now, in the entire City of Shadows, the only person who could protect her was her father. Naturally, she wouldn't provoke her father's anger over such a small matter. However, when her mother's bony and incomparably cold hands touched her, Mu Xiaoxue couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. It was really like a pair of hands of a dead person. Not to mention the lack of warmth, there were even rotting acne on the back of the hands. She didn't know what kind of feelings her father had for her mother. He was actually able to carry a person who looked like a skeleton and was covered in rotting sores. No wonder the city lord's wife, Zhui Yan, hated her mother so much. Compared to the city lord's wife, it was obvious that her father's love for her mother, Mu Qingya, was unquestionable. Mu Xiaoxue took a deep breath and used almost all of her strength to hold Mu Qingya's bony hands. With this touch, she felt that her mother was missing two pinky fingers. She was so shocked that she almost let go. Mu Qingya said intermittently, Xiao, Xiao Shui. Mu Jinghong hurriedly hugged her and said in a deep voice, I'm here, Qingya. Don't worry, your illness will definitely get better. I will send the best people to treat you. However, before I reach an agreement with the second young master, I will have to trouble you to stay here for a few more days. Mu Qingya spent a lot of effort before slowly nodding her head, I know. However, she knew her own body better than anyone else. This body was about to collapse. After experiencing so many medicinal trials, she was already lucky to be able to hold on until today. However, she didn't know how long she could hold on. She knew in her heart that once her body completely collapsed, she might turn into a pile of meat paste or something even uglier. She didn't want to frighten her daughter, Xiao Shui. Her Xiao Shui was so perfect. She was like her in every aspect. This girl has a brighter future. She can't stay in a place like Tianyun. She can't. Mu Qingya grabbed Mu Jinghong's hand tightly and said word by word with great difficulty, I want you to promise me one thing. It doesn't matter if I die, but our daughter, she can't join the heavenly fate, Mu Qingya said in a low voice. I want her to break away from the heavenly fate, break away. Qingya, don't get agitated. Mu Jinghong hurriedly said to Mu Qingya, Qingya, why would you say that? When did Xiao Shui join the Heavenly Fate Academy? Mu Qingya held Mu Xiaoshue's hand. She looked a little nervous. Even if you don't have it now, it doesn't mean that you won't have it in the future. I'm already, almost, about to die. They have no humanity. Xiao Shui is my daughter. She meets the conditions in all aspects. They will demand Jinghong, for the sake of our many years of husband-wife relationship, you must help Xiao Shui, help her, break away. Mu Xiaoshui was silent. Her face was as heavy as water. Chapter 5191. Despite her mother's bony claws pressing down on her hand, Mu Xiaoshui's heart did not waver. One of her mother's hands was obviously missing 2 fingers. When she held her hand, it made Mu Xiaoshui shudder. Whether her mother did not let her join Tianyun was for her sake or not, it was hard to say. After all, with her current identity as an ordinary commoner, if she did not join Tianyun, she would not be able to live a good life. Dawdle in the City of Shadows. With that woman Zhui Yan in the City of Shadows, Mu Xiaoshui would never have a good life. Other than joining Tianyun, what else could she do? Mu Xiaoshui secretly gritted her teeth. If she joined Tianyun, her fate would probably change greatly. If she listened to Mu Qingya's words, he was afraid that he could only muddle along like this for the rest of his life. In front of Mu Jinghong, Mu Xiaoshui did not dare to say anything. She just lowered her head in silence. Mu Qingya said, If Tianyun must use my daughter, then Mu Roshuan can help. Anyway, she has already taken the improved medicine. Okay. Mu Jinghong nodded and looked at the skinny woman in her arms with a gentle expression. Qingya, don't worry. I have heard everything you said. You will get better. You will definitely get better. You are such a strange woman. God must be reluctant to let you go like this. Mu Jinghong held Mu Qingya's hand and sighed softly. Mu Qingya showed a self-deprecating smile. Is it? God. She never believed in God, nor did she believe in fate. Heaven had never been kind to her, or even to her daughter. Otherwise, her daughter would not be like her, born a cripple. This was the heavens being unfair to her and her mother. God had never given her any hope, nor had he given her any tenderness. So why should she be kind to others? This was especially true for those talented geniuses who seemed to have saved the world with their own protagonist aura. None of them could feel the pain of being a mediocre human. No one could understand her pain, unwillingness, and resentment. These people should be like Long Chuyun and experience what it felt like to walk down from the altar and into the abyss. Why did she have to be an ordinary person who was at the mercy of others just because she worked so hard? Arbor has a lot of secrets. Mu Qingya held Mu Xiaoshui's hand and said in a hoarse voice, You'd better avoid her. She's not someone you can handle. This person who had been reborn was like a demon who had returned from hell. Her daughter, Mu Xiaoshui, was definitely no match for this woman. Whether it was in terms of strength or intelligence, it was impossible to surpass them. The best method was to warn Xiao Shui to stay away from this woman, stay away from this evil spirit, the further the better, and never provoke her for the rest of her life. Unexpectedly, the more Mu Qingya said, the more indignant Mu Xiaoshui became. She had suffered at the hands of Arbor too many times to count. Every time he saw this woman, Xiao Mu, he would suffer at her hands without exception. Why did even her mother look down on her and say that she was no match for others? She was unwilling, indignant, and her heart was filled with anger. Chapter 5192. Wasn't it because that woman's cultivation was much higher than hers that she dared to speak and act so presumptuously? If only she, Xiao Muxue, could have this ability. Who knew who would be the one begging whom now? If I didn't guess wrongly, Arbor not only has a portable spirit domain, he might also have the spirit of the holy wood. The holy wood of the 5 spirit origins. Mu Xiaoshue's eyes were crimson red, and flames of jealousy shot out wantonly from the depths of her heart. She had heard her mother mention that Arbor had inherited the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl that her mother, Long Chuyun, had given her. Now, her mother said that not only did he have a portable spirit domain, he might even have the spirit of the holy wood. According to the news from Shuntian Prefecture, it should be close to the mark. Arbor not only has sacred water, but also has the holy wood. Perhaps, he is hiding some secret that we don't know. Mu Xiaoshue's eyes abruptly shot out a strange luster. I heard that the Talisman Hall has a soul swap talisman that can smack. Before Mu Xiaoshue could finish her sentence, Mu Qingya slapped her with a trembling hand, causing her to yelp in pain. Silly. Mu Qingya stared at her daughter with disappointment. If the soul swap talisman can be used, do you think mother can't fight for you? Xiao Mu is a cultivator. She has already experienced the 5 spirit reincarnation and broken through to the godly realm. Mu Qingya laboriously enunciated each word. With your normal person's soul energy, do you think? Can you swap out her powerful soul? If you do it rashly, you will probably only be consigned to eternal damnation. Mu Qingya supported her body with difficulty. Daughter, actually, being a normal person may not be unhappy. I only know that if I become a normal person with no accomplishments and don't strive for anything, I might just live a mediocre life without obtaining anything. I can't accept it. Mu Xiaoshue's voice choked with sobs. She pushed Mu Qingya's arm away and ran out sobbing while covering her face. Xiaoshue. Mu Jinghong roared in displeasure. Mu Qingya, on the other hand, coughed violently due to anger. Zhao Yi hurriedly said, Master, I will go out and take a look at junior sister. Master, I'll go see junior sister too. Gu Yixuan hurriedly followed. If something happened to his junior sister, Gu Yixuan felt that he might not be able to live on. His junior sister's crying appearance just now really made one's heart ache. Mu Qingya grabbed Mu Jinghong's hand tightly and said intermittently, Look after Shui. You have to look after Shui. She understood Shui's thoughts too well. A daughter resembled her mother. Shui was just like her. She was so competitive and wanted to fight against fate. However, fate was not something that could be explained in a few words. Mu Jinghong nodded repeatedly. She hugged Mu Qingya and said in a deep voice, Take good care of your body. When you are better, I will bring you and your mother back to the City of Shadows. Mu Qingya smiled bitterly. I am afraid that I won't be able to get better. She knew her own body best. Huang He and those bitches had probably used no less than 1,000 kinds of drugs on her. Her body was on the verge of collapse. It was only a matter of time. Chapter 5193. I won't. Mu Jinghong hurriedly shook his head. Since Patriarch Qin is willing to send so many people to save you, it means that he won't let you die so easily. Family head Qin will definitely send people to settle you down and save you. You can relax, you must relax, okay? Qingya, we still have a lot of good days to live in the future. Don't worry, as long as you get better, I'll deal with that bitch Shui Yan and let you follow me back to the City of Shadows. I'll let you be the City Lord's wife. Mu Qingya's lips curled into a smile. If you're serious about treating me well, then you must take good care of Shui. I'm afraid something will happen to my daughter. Don't worry, I will. I will definitely protect our daughter and won't let anyone bully her. Mu Qingya nodded tiredly. Mu Jinghong's hand suddenly grasped Mu Qingya's hands tightly. When he touched her two broken fingers, a trace of anger flashed through his eyes. Qingya, don't worry, I will talk to second young master again. I will definitely ask them to let you go as soon as possible. Mu Qingya only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. She knew very well in her heart. Mu Jinghong couldn't say anything in front of second young master. Second young master was willing to give him some face and let him bring his daughter to visit her. This was already considered generous. As for men's vows and sweet words, it was fine to just listen to them. She, Mu Qingya, had lived a miserable life and was not tolerated by the heavens. She didn't want her daughter to walk down her old path. It was too hard and not worth it. She shouldn't let her good years go to waste. Mu Xiaoshue's cries reached Gu Yishuan's ears from afar, causing his heart to clench. He couldn't bear it. He walked over quickly, and from afar, he saw Zhao Yi, that grandson, hugging his beloved junior sister, whispering something under a cluster of flowering trees. Gu Yishuan's expression became very ugly on the spot and a trace of anger surged from the bottom of his heart. Just as he was about to take a few steps forward and pull Zhao Yi away, he heard Zhao Yi whisper to Xiao Shui, junior sister, don't be so unhappy. Hall Master Mu is also thinking for you. That soul exchange talisman might really hurt you. Then what do you think we should do? Mu Xiaoxue said indignantly. My mother can't even save herself. I'm just a weak woman. How am I supposed to protect myself in the future? Zhao Yi immediately patted his chest and said, don't worry junior sister, I will definitely protect you. Mu Xiaoxue sneered in her heart. However, Gu Yishuan interrupted first. With your cultivation, you can't even defeat one of Qiao Mu's fingers. What are you going to use to protect Xiao Shui? What did you say? Zhao Yi jumped up in agitation as if he had been stung by a bee's tail. Gu Yishuan snorted coldly. If you really care about junior sister, then you should come up with a better idea for her. What do you mean? Junior sister. Gu Yishuan approached the two with a gloomy face. Think about it. Do you really want to exchange your soul into that evil woman's body? If you want to take over her body, then you have to give birth to her child. Not only that, you have to face her paralyzed face all day long. Are you willing to do that? Mu Xiaoxue had a look of realization and shook her head. I don't want to give birth to her child. I don't want to. She wasn't willing to bear that kind of pain. Chapter 5194. On what basis? On what basis should she, a pure and noble young lady, help that slut bear a child? Bah, don't even think about it. Moreover, she, Mu Xiaoxue, was a prideful person. The man she wanted had to be the best in the world, the perfect and flawless. How could she take over someone else's husband? She didn't want that. Moreover, that man's heart was filled with other women. She couldn't tolerate such a thing happening to her. The man she wanted had to give his heart and soul to her alone. He couldn't have any other thoughts. Gu Yishuan cracked a sinister smile. Junior sister, what you want is only that person's talent. It's her life's opportunity. Yes, yes. Mu Xiaoxue nodded. She almost had a nightmare. If she really took over that woman's broken body, she would be pregnant and have to raise her child in the future. She really wanted to vomit to death. Looking at that stoic face every day was too painful. No, Gu Yishuan was right. She only wanted that woman's natural luck. It was an opportunity that she couldn't live without. As for that rotten body, she didn't want it. Gu Yishuan's eyes flashed with pride. He looked at Zhao Yi and said, I heard that our Tianyin's Talisman Hall has a talisman called the Universe Reversal Talisman. Zhao Yi's heart trembled. That's the most powerful talisman the Talisman Hall has made in all these years. What do you want? What, is eldest senior brother's deep love for junior sister all an act? You don't even dare to steal a mere universe reversal talisman. You want me to steal a talisman from the Talisman Hall? Zhao Yi almost shouted. In the end, his rationality pulled him back. He had no choice but to lower his voice and spit out those words. Mu Xiaoshue's eyes lit up when she heard the words universe reversal talisman. That's right, how could she forget that there was such a talisman in the world? This talisman was practically tailor-made for her. She needed this talisman. She wanted this talisman. She wanted to transfer all of that woman's destiny and all of her good fortune to herself. She, Mu Xiaoshue, was destined to take everything from that woman, including her cultivation, her portable spiritual domain, the holy wood, the holy water, everything. Just the thought of it made Mu Xiaoshue's blood boil. It was as if she had already succeeded and taken over everything that the bitch had. Ah, fate, is fate unfair to me? If it was unfair, she could fight for it. She could try her best to defy the heavens and change her fate. Ha, ha 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 ha. Thinking of this, Mu Xiaoshue could not help but giggle. She really wanted to obtain this inverse the universe talisman. She couldn't help but look at Zhao Yi expectantly. Seeing this, Gu Yishuan couldn't help but laugh in her heart. Zhao Yi, oh Zhao Yi, it's not so easy to pretend to be a Casanova. Once Zhao Yi stepped into the Hall of Talismans and Spells to steal talismans, he would teach him a lesson he would never forget. Zhao Yi loved and cherished this junior sister from the bottom of his heart. When he saw that she was looking forward to him, his heroic complex surged and he hurriedly nodded at her. Don't worry, junior sister. As long as such a talisman really exists in the Hall of Talismans and Spells, I will get it for junior sister even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire. Zhao Yi solemnly promised. Chapter 5195. Senior Brother. Mu Xiaoshue was overjoyed. She moaned and fell into Zhao Yi's arms. She hugged the man with a tender and affectionate look on her face. Zhao Yi immediately hugged her soft waist. His heart was filled with joy as he lowered his head to ask for a kiss. Mu Xiaoshue was secretly angry, but in order to trick Zhao Yi into giving her his unswerving loyalty, she had to bite the bullet and let him kiss her. But when she felt her lips turn cold, she felt nauseous. Resisting the urge to vomit, Mu Xiaoshue pretended to smile at the man. Zhao Yi's heart was in turmoil. He reached out and hugged the woman he loved tightly. He felt like he was floating. It felt like even if he had to go through a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, there was nothing to be afraid of. In order to make little junior sister happy, he was willing to risk his life. He was willing to do anything for her. Gu Yishuan gritted his teeth and looked coldly at Zhao Yi. Zhao Yi was a brainless man. He was destined to be his stepping stone. Even he, who had joined the organization halfway, knew about the Talisman Hall. It was the most mysterious place in the entire sect. But in order to trick Zhao Yi, Gu Yishuan spared no effort. I heard that Master Luo from the Talisman Hall has been by young master's side recently. As the deputy hall master of the Talisman Hall, he should have such an important talisman with him. Zhao Yi was not a complete fool. He was not completely blinded by beauty. Hearing Gu Yishuan's words, he turned around with his junior sister in his arms. He stared at Gu Yishuan and sneered. Is there such a coincidence? Gu Yishuan shrugged and smiled pretentiously. Coincidence or not, we will only know when we see it. What do you mean? What I mean is Master Luo is an important member of the Hall of Heavenly Fortune Talisman Hall. Even if he does not have the inverse the universe talisman with him, he should at least know who has it now. Zhao Yi's eyebrows were completely tied into a dead knot. Was Gu Yishuan tricking him? If you were to ask Master Luo such a sensitive question, then, Senior Brother Zhao, am I making things too difficult for you? Mu Xiaoxue, who was buried in his arms, raised her head and asked gently. Zhao Yi hurriedly hugged her tightly and said with a smile, no problem, I'll leave this matter to Senior Brother. For the beauty in his arms, what was so difficult about climbing a mountain of swords or plunging into a sea of fire? Zhao Yi was hot-headed and immediately agreed. It was worth it to fight for his junior sister. Greetings, second young master. Mu Jinghong was led to the back garden. Mu Jinghong glanced at the man who was standing in front of the stone table, leaning slightly to practice calligraphy with his back facing her. Mu Jinghong forced a smile and bowed to the Omega Kotoku. Second young master was dressed in a purple robe. He stood tall and straight in front of them. Oh, you came at the right time. It's City Lord Mu. A laugh came from the courtyard entrance. Mu Jinghong turned around and hurriedly bowed again. Mu Jinghong greets eldest young master. Eldest young master Qin waved a small gold fan and smiled. City Lord Mu need not be so courteous. We are all family. Have a seat. Mu Jinghong cupped his hands in greeting and respectfully sat down on a stone stool in front of the two. He got straight to the point. Young master, when can this subordinate bring Hall Master Mu back to soaring heaven? Chapter 5196. Bring him back. Young Master Omega Kotoku glanced at Mu Jinghong with a spurious smile. City Lord Mu, have you forgotten? Father has already handed Flying Paradise to me. Flying Paradise is now under my jurisdiction. Isn't it right for me to keep Hall Master Mu? Young Master Omega Kotoku sneered. Could it be that Hall Master Mu is only subservient to me on the surface and is actually working for Father? Young Master, you're exaggerating. Mu Jinghong hastily defended himself. Flying Paradise was previously managed by family head Qin, but now it's considered second younger brother's subordinate. Eldest young Master Qin interrupted Mu Jinghong with a smile and winked at him. Second younger brother naturally has his own reasons for keeping Hall Master Mu. City Lord Mu, if there's nothing else, it's better for you to return early. He truly understood this younger brother of his all too well. His younger brother was eccentric, and obstinate. Once he set his mind on something, he would carry it out to the end. For example, it was his decision to leave Mu Qingya in Changle Villa. Mu Jinghong was truly too naive to think that he could influence second younger brother's decision. Mu Jinghong nodded gratefully at eldest young Master Qin. He wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for him and naturally knew that eldest young master was giving him advice. That's right, this second young master's temperament was extremely unpredictable. It would be more appropriate for him to return and seek help from family head Qin first and ask him to make a trip here. Even if he wanted to reason with this second young master, there was probably nothing he could do. This young master had never been an easy person to talk to. Thinking of this, Mu Jinghong didn't delay any longer. He stood up and bowed to young Master Omega Kotoku and eldest young master before hastily bidding farewell and leaving. Young Master Omega Kotoku's icy gaze stared fixedly at the man's departing figure. After a long while, he glanced at eldest young master. This younger brother never knew that eldest brother was so compassionate. Eldest young Master Qin gazed at him innocently. What do you mean? Didn't you remind Mu Jinghong to leave as soon as possible and not confront me head-on because you wanted to tell him that he can't rely on himself alone? He can't save Mu Qingya on his own. If we want to save her, we have to ask Father for help. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't resist chuckling as he waved the small fan in his hand. What are you saying? Mu Jinghong and I are not related in any way, so why should I help him? On the other hand, second brother, you had Ling send 2 fingers to the little Stoic's family on their wedding day. This gift is too original. I guarantee that the little Stoic won't like it and will even secretly remember you in her heart. You're not her. How do you know she won't like it? Eldest young Sir Chin waved his fan and said with a grin, of course I know. I was lying on the roof opposite her house at the time and saw everything. You didn't see the little stoic's complexion. Tisk, it's so dark, it's comparable to the bottom of a pot. Omega Kotoku looked at him silently. Second brother, don't blame me for not teaching you a few moves. You can't woo a girl like this. Say, who would freaking be happy if you sent her 2 bloody severed fingers on her wedding day? Why don't you learn from eldest brother and have Ling send her a pile of good stuff? Although the little stoic doesn't like it on the surface, she'll still accept it all. She's a girl, after all. Sending her some shiny things is better than sending her bloody ones. Omega Kotoku glanced at him silently before standing up and walking towards the woodshed. Chapter 5197. Eldest young Sir Chin was startled and hastily followed after him, shouting the entire way. Second brother ran, why are you looking for her again? I'm telling you, if you want the little stoic to be happy, why don't you cut to the chase and kill this woman? She really won't like it if you give her a finger today and an ear tomorrow. Her body is currently undergoing the 3rd stage of mutation. That's right. Eldest young Sir Chin chuckled as he spread his hands. Otherwise, father wouldn't have let people rescue her. To tell the truth, since you won't kill her, then you might as well do us a favor and let Mu Jinghong bring her back. At that time, the little stoic will definitely be looking for trouble with Mu Jinghong and won't be able to find trouble with us. What do you think of eldest brother's idea? The second young sir couldn't be bothered with him and quickly left. Eldest young Sir Chin stopped in his tracks with a grin and waved the small fan in his hand as he muttered to himself, if you do this, you'll only drift further and further away. Who do you think the little stoic is? Don't try to guess the little stoic's thoughts, you won't be able to guess them even if you did. The next day, Zhaoguang gathered over 1,000 disciples and sat silently in front of Dragon Flame City's capital office. They didn't do anything out of line and only sat there silently protesting the crown prince's order to capture their holy lady. This incident attracted countless commoners from all over the streets to watch. Everyone who passed by the capital office couldn't resist stopping to take a look at Zhaoguang's meditating disciples. Everyone wanted to know how the capital office would deal with them. After all, Holy Lady Zhaoguang's methods were exceedingly formidable and could save a dying person bitten by a zombie. But even so, she was still no match for His Highness the Crown Prince and was currently being held captive in the capital office's prison. The Holy Lady and her entourage were all imprisoned for the reason of causing trouble for no reason. About 16 to 16 hours had passed since yesterday's incident. It could be assumed that Holy Lady Zhaoguang's days in prison weren't too pleasant. It rained in the morning. Although it was dusk now, the stone tiles on the streets were still damp. A low-key and luxurious carriage pulled by 4 spirit horses stopped in front of the capital office's gate. The carriage's curtains were gently brushed open. Everyone was stunned when they saw the person who came down from the carriage. He saw the little stoic crown princess slowly walking down the stairs with a cold and delicate face. Last night at the banquet, the young crown princess was brought back to the Eastern Palace by the crown prince to rest. She slept until noon. If it wasn't for Kai Xiu's reminder, she would have forgotten about the sacred maiden of bright light and her entourage. Everyone's gaze landed on the young crown princess's cold face, and they couldn't help but praise her beauty in their hearts. Unfortunately, her cold and jade face was covered in a layer of frost all day long, and there wasn't the slightest trace of a bright and beautiful smile. It was icy cold to the extreme. Crown Princess. Kai Xiu held her hand, and her footsteps paused slightly. The little crown princess followed her gaze and looked at the people kneeling on both sides of the capital office. The light in the young crown princess's eyes flickered as she spoke coldly. Since they are so worried about the holy maiden, why don't we throw them into the prison as well and let them accompany their holy maiden? Everyone, fuck, this young crown princess's train of thought was indeed completely different from the rest of the world. When she saw other people sitting quietly in protest, she actually directly detained this group of people. Her attitude was clearly, "I want to see how many people you Zhaoguang can provide." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.